Chapter 845. You're the weirdest. You don't have inner demons and aren't affected by me. I shouldn't let a person like you live in this world. The inner demon said fiercely. I don't have inner demons in my body. You can't control me, so how are you going to kill me? Haha, there's no need for me to do it myself. If someone does it, as long as I control the two of them, do you think you can still survive with your cultivation? The inner demon said proudly. Tang Zheng's head trembled. It was indeed so. As long as either the Empyrean Fairy or the Hundred Faces Star Lord fell into the control of the inner demons, then Tang Zheng would definitely not be able to get anything out of it. Seeing that the two of them were not in a good situation, Tang Zheng knew that he could no longer stand by and watch. The first thing he had to do was to break through this strange illusion. Break for me, Tang Zheng bellowed. Holding onto the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrow in his hands, the bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrow shot out into the sky. Heaven-shocking bow, shooting sun arrow. The inner demons actually recognized the two divine weapons at a glance and exclaimed. Tang Zheng laughed coldly, only to hear a shattering sound. The scene in front of his eyes changed, creating circles of ripples. The shooting sun arrow unimpeded struck the rock wall, causing rocks to fly everywhere. The scene in front of him changed, and Tang Zheng actually realized that the Hundred Faces Star Lord was already on the verge of death and was actually attacking the air nonstop. And the Empyrean Fairy was also continuously dodging. There was no one in front of him. There was no second Hundred Faces Star Lord or Empyrean Fairy in this canyon, and even the shadow in front of Tang Zheng had disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng was flabbergasted. So everything from before was an illusion, created by the inner demons controlling people's hearts. So no matter how the Hundred Faces Star Lord attacked, it would not have any effect. This was because he was attacking the air. As for the Empyrean Fairy, no matter how she dodged, that imaginary self would always follow her like a shadow, because it was an illusion constructed by her heart. Tang Zheng's head trembled. Looking at this scene, he was deeply shocked. No wonder the inner demons were so confident. He really did have the strength. Even experts like the Hundred Faces Star Lord and the Empyrean Fairy had only taken a glance inside the bronze coffin, and they had been tricked by him. As for Ling and Little White, they looked at this scene with curiosity. They didn't look into the bronze coffin, so they weren't affected. You people. Inner demons. You people. The inner demons. You will suffer the consequences of your own actions. Everything was happening right under his nose. He was powerless. From the moment the bronze coffin was opened, he could do nothing. His power was quickly draining away. Suddenly, he looked at the culprit of all this, Tang Zheng. If he had not opened the coffin without permission, then none of this would have happened. But when he looked at Tang Zheng, he was shocked and shouted, Why are you not affected? Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi with a complicated expression and said, Tian Chanzi, get better quickly. I am Tang Zheng. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng coldly and said, Tang Zheng, why are you not affected by the inner demons? My inner demons have been eliminated. They can't affect me. Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Zheng in disbelief and exclaimed, The inner demons have been eliminated? How did you do it? Tang Zheng did not answer and said, You are not Tian Chanzi. Why did you take over his body? Leave him quickly. You still have the time to care about him. Your top priority is to deal with the inner demons. If the inner demons appear, not only will you die, but the world will also be in chaos. Tian Chanzi said solemnly. Tang Zheng said that Tian Chanzi's words were reasonable. They had to deal with the inner demons first. Otherwise, if they let him control anyone and escape, then it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was almost impossible to find him. However, whether it was the Hundred Faces Star Lord or the Empyrean Fairy, he was no match for them. So, he turned his eyes and stared at the bronze coffin. He rushed toward the bronze coffin with big strides. Tian Chanzi looked at his actions and did not stop him. He sighed in his heart. Success or failure depended on this one move. If there was no Tang Zheng, an anomaly without the inner demons, this would be a dead end. No one would be able to escape. With such an anomaly, there might be a ray of hope. Master, be careful. Linger was scared stiff. The changes in the scene were beyond her imagination. Tangjing nodded slightly. Just as he was about to rush to the bronze coffin, a huge body blocked his way. A giant. He actually came to block Tangjing and howled. He was not affected, so he was still anxious to carry out the Hundred Faces Star-Lord's order to not let Tangjing get close to the bronze coffin. "Get out of my way!" Tangjing hysterically roared. Time was of the essence and could not be delayed, but this big guy still blocked his way without hesitation. He was really unlucky. The giant was indifferent. Instead, he kicked at him. The wind was biting cold, and a huge pressure fell from the sky. Tangjing was angry and anxious. He drew his bow and shot the shooting sun arrow directly at the giant's foot. Blood splattered. The shooting sun arrow directly penetrated the giant's foot. The giant was in pain. He howled and staggered back. Tangjing took advantage of this good opportunity. His body flashed, and he went around the giant, arriving in front of the bronze coffin. Indeed, there was a person lying in the bronze coffin. This person's face was ruddy and handsome. He was a middle-aged uncle whose appearance was not inferior to the Hundred Faces Star-Lord. His originally tightly shut eyes suddenly opened, and his pair of eyes seemed to have a soul-sucking demonic power as he stared straight at Tangjing. Tangjing felt as if his soul was about to leave his body. He hurriedly channeled his energy and guarded his mind. Although he did not have the inner demons, his heart was still stirred by the other's eyes. It was enough to show the other's strength. "You want to kill me?" The inner demon stood up. He was dressed in ancient clothing. His black hair fluttered in the wind. The corner of his mouth hung an incomparably mysterious smile. "So this is the true face of the inner demons," Tangjing said fiercely. "I do want to kill you. You intimidate people's souls. You must die." The inner demons laughed disapprovingly. "If I was so easy to kill, then they could have just killed me back then. Why would they go through so much trouble to imprison me here?" Tangjing's head thumped. The inner demon's words were reasonable. The ancient people were so powerful that they could only imprison each other. This meant that the inner demons could not be casually killed. But seeing the inner demons in front of him and the war soul sword could pierce his chest at any time, Tangjing felt that he could not let go of this great opportunity. The Empyrean fairy was hanging by a thread. If he did not make a move, then the inner demons would control her. No matter what, this was a result that Tangjing could not accept. "What are you waiting for? Kill him with one strike," Tian Chanzi urged. The inner demons looked at Tian Chanzi with a smile and said, "You are a remnant soul left behind by that person. Now you are attached to this person's body in an attempt to stop them from opening the bronze coffin. Unfortunately, you still failed." Tian Chanzi's expression kept changing. He did not say a word. The inner demon looked around and stared at the deep and terrifying cliff, saying, "You used the place with the densest evil chi to imprison me. It's a pity that the evil chi has consumed a lot of my power over the years. But as long as I come out, this world will still be mine." Tangjing muttered in his heart. Previously, the Hundred Faces Star-Lord said that he had to pull the bronze coffin up to open it. Now it seemed that pulling it up was more serious than opening the coffin at the bottom of the canyon. Could it be that the Hundred Faces Star-Lord was deceived by the Demon Clan? The Demon Clan did not tell them the truth. Once the bronze coffin was pulled up, without the suppression of the baleful chi, the inner demons would become stronger. This was equivalent to helping the inner demons. The Hundred Faces Star-Lord was indeed deceived by the Demon Clan. The Demon Clan was incomparably cunning. Although the Hundred Faces Star-Lord helped them return, how could they easily believe him? Therefore, they used a fact and not a lie to deceive him. It was a pity that the Demon Clan's luck was not good. Before they could open the coffin, they were all killed by Tian Chanzi. Of course, the Demon Clan knew the power of the inner demons. This was a very risky operation, but the Demon Clan had another plan. The Demon Clan planned to all submit to the inner demons and follow this powerful new master to expand their territory. It would not take long for the entire world to belong to the Demon Clan. This was a huge sacrifice. However, the Demon Clan in the sky beyond sky was not as strong as before. They had no choice but to make this plan. However, as long as the Demon Clan's power and glory could be guaranteed, They were willing to worship the inner demons as their masters. It had to be said that the demon clan did not play by the rules. They were willing to make such a huge sacrifice. Of course, once they succeeded, the rewards would be huge. Unifying the world was a magnificent feat that countless generations of the demon clan had not been able to achieve. If Tangjing knew the whole story, he would probably be amazed by the boldness and strangeness of the current master of the demon clan. Of course, the demon clan was dead, and no one knew about this. Looking at the complacent inner demons, Tangjing gnashed his teeth and said, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? You think I don't dare to kill you, right? Then you are completely wrong. Go to hell." Tang Zheng stabbed out with his sword. "No." A cry of alarm came from Tian Chanzi's mouth. This was Tian Chanzi's original voice. Tang Zheng was startled, but it was too late. The War Soul Sword pierced the inner demon's chest. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed the War Soul Sword red. The inner demons did not resist or even dodge. Tang Zheng found it inconceivable. The inner demons were so strong, they should at least have some dodging movements. Like a puppet, they allowed the War Soul Sword to pierce their chest. This was too strange. Tang Zheng had a bad premonition. "Why didn't you dodge?" The inner demon said indifferently, "My combat ability is not strong. I am inferior to you. How can I dodge? I might as well take your sword." Tang Zheng scratched his head, but he could not guess the inner demon's plan. "If you don't fight back, won't you die?" Chapter 846. The inner demons did not close his eyes, and his smile made Tang Zheng very uneasy. Just as he was about to pull out Battle Soul, he found that the inner demon's hands were firmly holding onto the sword, and blood flowed down his palm. "Tang Zheng, you fell into his trap. Quickly let go." Tian Chanzi's voice sounded again. This time it was still Tian Chanzi himself. Obviously, the remnant soul attached to his body was weakening, and he was worried about Tang Zheng's safety, so he temporarily seized control of his body. Tang Zheng glanced at Tian Chanzi from the corner of his eyes, and found that his face was full of regret. Suddenly, Tian Chanzi's face changed, and he became incomparably cold. He had lost control of his body again, and he said resolutely, "Tang Zheng, you don't have the inner demons, so you have a chance to live. Remember, guard your mind, and don't let him control you." "Haha, do you think it's that easy?" The inner demons laughed disapprovingly, and his hands let go of Battle Soul and fell straight down. His eyes were wide open, and there was no sign of life. Tang Zheng did not understand what was going on, but his mind suddenly trembled, and he felt that his soul was out of his body, as if this body was no longer his, and his original soul was about to be squeezed out. He quickly remembered Tian Chanzi's warning, and quickly circulated his energy, guarding his mind. "Haha, do you think this is enough to shut me out?" A voice sounded in Tang Zheng's mind, making him quiver, and he almost shouted in fear. Fortunately, Tian Chanzi had been in his mind for a long time, and he had experience, so he was not scared to the point of being at a loss. It turned out that the inner demons did not die, but ran into his body. No matter what method he used, in short, Tang Zheng was in big trouble. "Now you should know why no one dares to kill me, right?" The inner demons said proudly. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that it was no wonder that he was only imprisoned here and not killed. It turned out that killing him had to pay such a big price. It was easy to destroy his body, but his soul would attach to the body of the person who killed him, thus taking control of the person's body. This was not killing the inner demons, but sacrificing oneself, so no one was willing to take this risk. "Looks like you're a smart person. You've already guessed it. It's very easy to kill me, and there are many ways. But no matter what method you use, it doesn't matter whether it's long range or short range. As long as you kill me, my soul will possess his body and take over his body. Tell me, is there anyone in this world who would sacrifice themselves to do such a stupid thing? Moreover, this can't really kill me. Just let me change my body." The inner demon's voice was full of pride, mockery, and ridicule, which made Tang Zheng shudder. It turned out that the inner demons were so powerful, no wonder Tian Chanzi said that it would be a huge catastrophe if he released him. He was an immortal monster, and even if his body died, his soul could be passed on indefinitely. How did such a heaven-defying existence come into being? Tang Zheng was really curious and had an impulse to find the source, but now he could not even protect himself. Your body is not bad. I am very satisfied. In the future, I will let your body witness my glory. You should feel honored. It's an honor, you big-headed ghost. Tang Zheng could not help but scold. You want to take over my body and control it? No way. My inner demons have been eliminated. Let's see what you can do. The inner demons have been eliminated. If it was like what they did, I really could not do anything to you. But you are courting death by killing me, so let me take over your body. Without the inner demons, I can still control you. Tang Zheng felt a chill in his heart. Even a wise man would make a mistake. He only wanted to save people, but he did not expect that he would lose his advantage, and the inner demons would take advantage of him. He subconsciously looked at Tian Chanzi. Perhaps he was also aware of this, but he still urged him to kill the inner demons. This was to let him take a risk, because if he could not defeat the inner demons, then the inner demons could get away with it. If he was lucky enough to suppress the inner demons, then he would have a chance to live. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry, but now there was no way to escape, so he could only fight with all his might to see if he could fight for that glimmer of hope. I advise you not to waste your efforts, otherwise, it is not a wise decision to try endless torture in the last moments of your life, the inner demons advised. Tang Zheng coldly snorted. How can I be scared by your few words? Until the last moment, I will not give up so easily. It is still not clear who will win. The ignorant are not afraid. Then I will show you my power, and let you have a taste of what it feels like to live a life worse than death. After the inner demons finished speaking, Tang Zheng felt a pain that he had never experienced before in his mind, and then it spread to his limbs, bones, and 8 extraordinary meridians. It was as if his soul was being pulled out of his body. This kind of pain was not only deep in his bones, but also deep in his soul. The pain from his soul made his whole body tremble, and with a plop, he fell to the ground, twitching non-stop. Ling Er saw this scene and turned pale with fright. She quickly guarded him and asked anxiously, Master, how are you, Master? Heaven Monk had mixed feelings as he advised. Miss, you don't have to be anxious. Everything has its own destiny. If he really obtained that glimmer of hope, then he would have saved this world. Otherwise, all of you will be destroyed together with him. It's just a matter of time. Ling Er suddenly raised her head and stared at Tian Chanzi. I am willing to die for Master. Haha, your courage is commendable, but this is not a problem that can be solved by dying in his place. Don't worry, if he fails, you will soon die, and you will be reunited. Tian Chanzi laughed strangely. Get out of my body. Another voice burst out from Tian Chanzi's throat. You finally can't wait anymore? Don't worry, I am just borrowing your body. I will not hurt you. The inner demons are the most important. I will not give up until I see the final result. I have guarded the bronze coffin for so many years, and I thought that everything would be peaceful, that the inner demons and I would disappear in the vast river of history. I did not expect that the situation would be disturbed by you people, so if there are any serious consequences, it will be your own fault. But you should not harm Tang Zheng. He is innocent. Since he does not have inner demons, if he did not kill the inner demons, then he would not be in danger, the real Tian Chanzi retorted. Haha, maybe this is the will of the heavens to let him, a person without inner demons, appear here. This is his destiny, he cannot escape. I am just following orders. What a glib tongue, nonsense. Ling Er looked at Tian Chanzi talking to himself and almost broke down. Tears flowed out of her eyes, and she looked at her master who was lying on the ground in pain and started crying. Squeak, squeak. Xiaobai also circled around Tang Zheng, trying to think of a solution, but there was nothing he could do. His eyes were full of worry. As for the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star-Lord, they were almost exhausted. They were still trapped in the illusion, fighting or hiding from themselves. The giant's tall body was just a decoration. He was at a loss, looking at everything in a daze. Although he was big, his brain was not very good. The cold wind blew, and the bottom of the canyon was very strange. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would be scared silly. Tang Zheng was still twitching and struggling. The muscles on his face were almost twisted together, and he even looked a little ferocious. Inside his body, a battle that could not be seen was silently going on. Back and forth, it was a battle of slaughter, and the battlefield itself was suffering from all kinds of torment. But Tang Zheng was still firmly holding onto his last trace of consciousness. Although he was forced back step by step, he still did not give up. Don't struggle in vain. You are not my match. Let go and willingly accept all of this. The inner demon's voice seemed to have a magical power, guiding Tang Zheng patiently. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth, refusing to compromise. He constantly circulated his energy, and true qi flowed through his body. Only then was he able to maintain his body's vitality and prevent himself from completely collapsing. If I didn't want to take over your body, perhaps I could have kept you as my servant. That's because you really do have character. It's no wonder you have such a cultivation base at such a young age. Even in the entire world, your talent is one of the best. Oh, that's not right. You're actually a celestial. The 9 young saint body. Haha, I've really picked up a treasure. This talent is 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,000 years. I've heard there are also many mysterious profundities. Once I take over your body, I'll slowly discover them. The inner demons acted as if they had discovered a new continent and became excited. With this body of yours, my shortcomings will be made up for. My physical body's strength will greatly increase. In the future, no one will be able to kill me. That way, I'll be even safer. After all, every time I take over someone's body, it's not a simple matter. The inner demon's endless chatter caused Tang Zheng's heart to sink to the bottom. He was the one directly involved, so he had the deepest feeling. He had no choice but to multitask. On one hand, he had to resist the torturous pain of his body. On the other, he had to resist the inner demon's attack on his soul. Tang Zheng had already been forced back step by step. The inner demons had already reached his heart. That beating heart and rapidly flowing blood was Tang Zheng's final fortress. If he allowed the inner demons to invade his heart, then he would truly be defeated. There would be no turning back. His soul would disappear, and his life would truly come to an end. I can already see the heart. This heart is truly powerful. I can feel its surging life force. This is the heart I want. The heart of my inner demons should be this powerful. Ha ha ha. Don't be delusional. This is mine. Don't even think about taking it away. Tang Zheng retorted. Ha ha, let's see how you'll protect it. As soon as the inner demons finished speaking, a mysterious energy rushed toward the heart. It attempted to wrap around the heart and attack it. Tang Zheng resisted with all his might, but he was forced back step by step. In the end, a strand of the inner demon's soul broke through Tang Zheng's defenses and rushed into the heart with unstoppable momentum. In an instant, all of Tang Zheng's defenses collapsed. His heart was firmly occupied by the inner demons. Chapter 847. Losing control of his heart, Tang Zheng screamed in pain. He felt his soul leaving his body. The inner demon's arrogant laughter was extremely ear-piercing. Why can't I completely occupy this heart? Suddenly, the inner demon's voice sounded again. It was bewildered. What's wrong with your heart? The inner demon's voice suddenly rose and screamed. Although Tang Zheng felt very uncomfortable, he was not scared out of his wits. That trace of sobriety made him realize that the situation had taken a turn for the better. Heart? Could it be that Qi Yu's heart was working? For a long time, Qi Yu's heart did not respond. Tang Zheng almost forgot that his heart was Qi Yu's heart. Qi Yu's heart was extremely mysterious. It had helped him to escape danger many times. Qi Yu's heart, if you can really fight against the inner demons, then quickly show yourself. Otherwise, I'm going to die. As if it had heard his thoughts, Qi Yu's heart began to beat rapidly. A mysterious force surged out of the heart. What's wrong with this heart? The mental devil shrieked at the top of its lungs. Are you trying to swallow me? Dream on. The inner demons had never encountered such a situation. In the past, he had taken over other people's bodies to extend his life. But everything happened naturally without any obstacles. This time, because Tang Zheng did not have the inner demons, There were many obstacles in the beginning. Now, they had broken through his defenses and entered his heart. He originally thought that he had succeeded, but now he realized that it was too early to be happy. There was still a mysterious force that firmly locked him in place. This force was somewhat familiar to him, but also somewhat fearful. I must have seen this force somewhere before. It's been too long. I can't remember it at the moment. Let me think. I must remember. The inner demons talked to himself. I remember now. Chiyu. This power is very similar to Chiyu's power. The inner demons suddenly realized. I was wondering how this person with such a weak cultivation could resist me. It turns out that he has the heart of Chiyu. Back then, Chiyu was also a celestial. That's why only this Tangzheng is able to control Chiyu's heart. Inner demons, you actually want to compete with me? A dignified voice suddenly sounded. Tangzheng shivered. This was the first time he had heard this voice. Just by listening to it, he felt an indescribable pressure. If it was an ordinary person, they would have knelt on the ground with a thud. Tangzheng gritted his teeth as he listened to the two voices in his body. He felt that it was a bit absurd, and he was also a bit scared. It turned out that Chiyu's heart was not an inanimate object. It actually had a consciousness. This was a hidden force that he had not sensed. Now that he thought about it, at the critical moment, Chiyu's heart had controlled his body. This was actually an extremely dangerous matter. Since Chiyu's heart could control him for a moment, then perhaps it could control him for a lifetime. Wasn't he being possessed? What was the difference between this and being possessed by the inner demons? It turned out that there was a ticking time bomb hidden in his body, but he was muddle-headed and did not know about it. His heart was ice-cold as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. This Chiyu's heart had always been hidden. Just why? His mind was a mess. For a moment, he could not figure out the reason. He could only quietly listen to the conversation between the two voices, hoping to gain something. Chiyu, I have yet to seek revenge for the past. I never thought that I would meet you again today. Humph. I thought that I would never have the chance to seek revenge in this lifetime. Now that I have the chance, I will devour you. Haha, the famous Chiyu will also die in my hands. This is a great honor. The inner demons laughed wildly. Back then, when I joined forces with the Yellow Emperor, I did not kill you. Instead, I imprisoned you. What a huge mistake. I actually let you live to the end. The Chiyu's heart said, Hee, kill me? Do you dare? You joined forces with the Yellow Emperor, but you could not do anything to me. All you could do was imprison me. Does this show how afraid you are of death? The inner demon snorted. Tangzheng was shocked. It turned out that the people who imprisoned the inner demons were Chiyu and the Yellow Emperor. In other words, before the Battle of Zhuelu, Chiyu and the Yellow Emperor were not sworn enemies. They even joined forces to fight against the inner demons. Perhaps something happened later that led to the war between the two great masters and the two tribes. Even if I am afraid of death, I will not be afraid of you. Inner demons, I could not deal with you back then, but things are different now. Do you think that I can't deal with you? The inner demon sneered. How can you deal with me? Back then, we all had inner demons. Even if we used all kinds of methods to expel the inner demons and suppress the inner demons, in the end, the inner demons were not completely expelled. Therefore, we would be at a great disadvantage against you. But now, the owner of this body does not have a trace of the inner demons. With this condition, do you still think that you are my match? The inner demons fell silent. The atmosphere became a little heavy. Suddenly, the inner demons said, I admit that what you said is reasonable, but you are only a remnant soul of the Chiyu from back then. You are no longer as powerful as before. Otherwise, why would you hide in this young man's body instead of directly occupying it? Therefore, don't boast too early. The outcome of the battle is not yet known. Tangzheng fell to the bottom of the valley. It seemed that the Chiyu's heart really wanted to possess him, but now it was not strong enough. He thought that obtaining the heart of the Chiyu was a great opportunity, but now it seemed that it was not an opportunity, but a bomb that could explode at any time. No, I can't just sit and wait for death. If the inner demons win, then I will have no chance to live. If the inner demons lose, I must guard against the heart of the Chiyu and think of ways to deal with it or destroy it. Tang Zheng made up his mind and began to think about how to deal with the heart of the Qiyu. There was no doubt that as long as he destroyed the remnant soul of the Qiyu, he would be safe. As for the heart of the Qiyu, he could not kill it as well. If he did, then he would not be able to live. Since you don't want to give up, then I will let you know how powerful I am. After the heart of the Qiyu finished speaking, an invisible force immediately wrapped around the inner demons. Tang Zheng only felt that the scene in front of him changed. The valley disappeared, and so did everyone else. He had actually magically arrived at a battlefield. On the battlefield, banners were fluttering, and dark clouds were pressing down. The two sides of the battle had already set up their chariots and horses. Under the command of two generals riding mighty strange beasts, both sides charged at each other. This is definitely not a normal battle in ancient times, and it is not a scene from a movie. It is too realistic, too shocking, and no special effects can compare to it. The two sides of the battle were not only humans, but also demonic beasts. Moreover, the mounts of the humans were very strange and extraordinary. They were all demonic beasts. Most demonic beasts were violent by nature. These people could actually tame demonic beasts, which showed how powerful they were. In addition, there were also giants. The giants were hundreds of meters tall, but they were not invincible on the battlefield. Some of them were even directly killed by some normal humans. Of course, there were two people who attracted the most attention on the battlefield. These two people were at the very front, and they were the generals of both sides. They were both extraordinarily powerful individuals, and with just a glance, people would feel reverence in their hearts. Some even prostrated themselves on the ground. The battle between these two people could be said to be earth-shattering. The earth cracked under their attacks, turning into valleys, mountains into plains, and plains into bottomless pits. This was simply the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Tang Zheng's breathing couldn't help but quicken. Compared to these people, his own ability was simply not enough. He was afraid that in a few rounds, he would die on the battlefield. The cycle of the sun and the moon, day and night alternated, but the battle still did not stop. In the end, after an unknown amount of time, one side was finally defeated and gradually retreated. In order to buy time for his clansmen to retreat, the general of that side resolutely resisted the enemy's overwhelming attacks by himself. In the end, a portion of his clansmen finally escaped, and he died of exhaustion. His heart was dug out, and although it left his body, it was still beating non-stop. Tang Zheng felt a pain in his heart, and the illusion in front of him disappeared. He suddenly realized that this battle might have really happened in history. It was the famous Battle of Zhuolu. The two generals who had the power to destroy the world were Qiyu and the Yellow Emperor. The person who was defeated and had his heart dug out was Qiyu, and that heart was Qiyu's heart. However, why was he seeing a battle from tens of thousands of years ago for no reason? He was like a bystander, clearly watching the earth-shattering battle. His heart stirred. All of this was probably related to Qiyu's heart and the inner demons. What happened to these two guys? Tang Zheng suddenly remembered that he did not hear their voices. Everything was eerily silent. However, the pain in his body seemed to have disappeared. Could it be that the inner demons had been eliminated? Before he could rejoice, the inner demon's voice sounded. It was hysterical and abnormally angry. Qiyu, you damned bastard. You didn't kill me back then, and now you actually used this youth's body to defeat me. I can't accept this. Inner demons, you're really lucky that I didn't completely kill you. Qiyu's remnant soul was also unwilling. Haha, you want to completely kill me? Do you have the ability? Back then, you and the Yellow Emperor couldn't completely kill me even when you joined forces, much less now. If it wasn't for this youth, you would have been devoured by me. How would you have the right to speak? Tang Zheng listened to the two's argument, but his body did not feel anything strange. He could not help but be curious and asked, "What's going on? Why did I see the scene of the Battle of Zhuolu just now?" The inner demons laughed. Just now, Qiyu lost his mind and naturally produced the scene of the Battle of Zhuolu. I finally understand why he lost to the Yellow Emperor. It's retribution. When he joined forces with the Yellow Emperor to deal with me, he never thought that he would be defeated by the Yellow Emperor one day. Haha. Shut up, Qiyu shouted angrily. Chapter 848. Tang Zheng was confused. I defeated the inner demons? What do you mean? The inner demons seemed to have seen through Tang Zheng's thoughts and said, You don't believe it, do you? Then I'll tell you the truth. Qiyu has the inner demons, so not only you, but he also fell into the illusion. Moreover, his murderous intent and resentment were very strong. If you didn't have the inner demons, you wouldn't have been confused by the illusion and controlled by it. You wouldn't have been angry and fell into the illusion and naturally withdrew. Once you withdrew from the illusion, you also withdrew with Qiyu, so you saved him and defeated me. Tang Zheng didn't quite understand, but one thing was certain, and that was that he didn't have the inner demons, and it did play a huge role. Of course, Qiyu also played a role, because Qiyu's heart resisted the inner demons. In fact, the hearts of Tang Zheng and Qiyu were like two locks. Both locks had to be opened at the same time for the inner demons to occupy Tang Zheng's body. Otherwise, no matter which lock he opened, he wouldn't be able to occupy Tang Zheng's body, which doomed him to failure. However, even if Qiyu wanted to completely kill the inner demons, he couldn't do it. After the two of them fought and tested each other's strength, they simply stopped attacking. The inner demons were very patient and carefully explained to Tang Zheng. He finally understood the whole story. He couldn't help but be secretly amazed. But he was also very distressed, because since the inner demons and Qiyu couldn't do anything to each other, didn't that mean that there would be two more souls in his body? He had already experienced the feeling of Tian Chanzi living in his body, and now he had so many secrets, he really didn't want the inner demons and Qiyu to know. Why are you living in my body? Why are you leaving my body? Tang Zheng said indignantly. Haha, I can't bear to leave your body. Who knows when I'll be able to take over your body? Celestial, 9 young saint body, that's a 1 in 10,000 physiques. How could I give it up? Laughed the inner demons. Qiyu said, My heart and Qiyu's heart are one. If you want me to leave, then take out Qiyu's heart. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes speechlessly. His own heart had long been swallowed by Qiyu's heart and fused into one. If his heart was dug out, how could he live? Therefore, these two would never leave his body no matter what. Tang Zheng scratched his head in distress. Why am I so miserable? He cried. Humph, young man, I, the famous inner demons, am living in your body because I think highly of you. You don't know what's good for you, said the inner demons in a bad mood. Shut up. Tang Zheng didn't have a good temper. No matter how great the other side's background was, he wasn't afraid. As soon as he said, shut up, the inner demons really didn't say anything. Tang Zheng clicked his tongue in wonder. Heh, how obedient. Now I'll have much more peace. Tang Zheng, Qiyu also seemed to have something to say. Tang Zheng felt a lingering fear. Qiyu's remnant soul was like a ticking time bomb. Hearing his voice, he couldn't help but shiver. You shut up too. As expected, Qiyu's voice also disappeared. Without these two voices buzzing in his ears, Tang Zheng felt much more relaxed. Hey, why are they so obedient? I said shut up, and they didn't even say half a word. Suddenly, he realized something strange and asked, Hey, why aren't you two talking? Are you mute? There was still no reply. This made him feel incredulous. Could it be that something had happened just now, so they couldn't talk? These were two souls. Tang Zheng couldn't observe what had happened to them. He couldn't help but recall the previous scene. He suddenly slapped his forehead and his eyes lit up. Could it be that I said shut up, so they can't talk? Although this idea was ridiculous, it was the only explanation. Hey, if that was the case, then he had the initiative and wouldn't be controlled by these two powerful souls. He could even control them to a certain extent. Open your mouth. He had a flash of inspiration and said, Phew, I'm suffocating. Young man, what did you do to stop me from talking? The inner demons asked angrily. Qiyu was also shocked and asked, Tang Zheng, how did you do it? Tang Zheng's heart was in turmoil. He never thought that a blind cat would meet a dead mouse. He was actually right. He could really control these two souls. The inner demons were still angrily questioning. How dare you tell me to shut up? I'm a dignified inner demon. No one has ever dared to speak to me with such an attitude and tone. You're the first. I'll make you regret it for the rest of your life. Inner demons, shut your stinky mouth, Tang Zheng scolded impatiently. There was dead silence. The inner demon's voice disappeared. Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel that it was very interesting. However, in Qi Yu's heart, this was a very serious matter. Tang Zheng's performance was far beyond his expectations. How did he do it? Even he was controlled by him? Tang Zheng, what's the matter with you? Qi Yu still didn't give up and asked. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. How would I know? You're Qi Yu. You're experienced and knowledgeable. Why don't you analyze it? Although he had seen how powerful Qi Yu was in the illusion, he was now only a remnant soul. Moreover, he was living in Tang Zheng's body and hadn't shown it. This was very strange. Tang Zheng couldn't help but suspect that Qi Yu had ulterior motives. He was probably plotting something. Therefore, he naturally didn't treat Qi Yu well. Qi Yu had silently lurked in Tang Zheng's body. He already knew everything about him. Therefore, he immediately heard a hint of displeasure. Just now, when you said those two words, there seemed to be a mysterious force that made me lose my ability to speak. As for what exactly happened, I really don't understand. Qi Yu said. Tang Zheng frowned suspiciously, guessing the authenticity of these words. In the end, he chose to believe these words because Qi Yu didn't have to use this to lie to him. Moreover, there was still the inner demons. If Qi Yu didn't say it, the inner demons would naturally say it in the future. Comparing the two, then they would know who was telling the truth. If Qi Yu lied, then he would be risking Tang Zheng's anger. Qi Yu was a smart person and wouldn't take this risk for no reason. Tang Zheng muttered. When did his words have such great power? Just one sentence was enough to control these two souls. He still couldn't figure out the reason, but he was secretly glad. If he didn't have this ability, it would be strange if these two souls didn't annoy him to death. With this move, whoever didn't listen, he would shut them up. It worked. Inner demons, you can speak now. Tang Zheng thought of this and showed great mercy. The inner demons finally understood that they were under someone else's roof and had to bow their heads. Although he was a very powerful person since ancient times, in front of Tang Zheng, he still had to bow his head. Even if things have come to this, I still can't make you leave my body. Then the two of you should get along peacefully. You'd better be obedient. Otherwise, I won't be polite. Tang Zheng sneered, just like how Grandmother Wolf faced Little Red Riding Hood. The two famous big shots were threatened by Tang Zheng just like that, and no one would believe it even if it was said out loud. But Qi Yu and the inner demons didn't dare to resist. Of course, Tang Zheng could guess what they were thinking and didn't want to care. Tang Zheng heaved a long sigh of relief and looked up, only to see that everyone was staring at him with burning eyes. Even the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven and the 100 transformations Star Sovereign had actually escaped from the illusion. In fact, since the inner demons failed to resist Qi Yu, his influence on these two people had naturally ended. Now, the inner demons couldn't affect anyone at all. Unless he occupied Tang Zheng's body, otherwise, it was impossible for him to recover his previous magical power. The others didn't know this and were all staring at him intently. When they saw him look up, everyone's heart trembled. If he was an inner demon, then they would be in trouble. They wouldn't even have the chance to escape. The 100 Faces Star-Lord's feelings were the most complicated. He had never taken Tang Zheng seriously and even hated him to the bone. His good deeds had been ruined by him time and time again. This time, he narrowly escaped death. After knowing that the inner demons had entered Tang Zheng's body, the 100 Faces Star-Lord rejoiced, but also felt that it was inconceivable. How did this Tang Zheng do it? He didn't have the inner demons. This was almost impossible. For someone as powerful as the 100 Faces Star-Lord, it wasn't that he didn't have the inner demons. It was just that he had been suppressed and couldn't let the inner demons gain the upper hand. The Empyrean Fairy looked exhausted. Just now, she had used up a lot of energy to avoid herself. Now, looking at Tang Zheng's appearance, she didn't know where she got the information that Tang Zheng could turn danger into safety. As for Ling Er, although she looked very anxious, she was the most confident. She believed that her master would be fine. In her heart, her master was invincible and omnipotent. On the other hand, Tian Chanzi had two souls entangled in his body. The remnant soul wouldn't be satisfied until it saw the final result. As for Tian Chanzi, he was worried sick. Although he knew that Tang Zheng usually had good luck, this was facing the inner demons. No matter how much he valued Tang Zheng, he couldn't help but have little confidence. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Tang Zheng asked with a strange expression. "Wah, master, you're fine?" Ling Er was like a skylark, flying into Tang Zheng's arms. The others were so scared that their facial muscles twitched a few times. If the opponent was the inner demons, then Ling Er's life would be in danger. Tang Zheng hugged Ling Er and smiled brightly. "Ling Er, do you think something will happen to me?" Ling Er shook her head like a rattle drum and said, "Of course not. Ling Er has always believed that Master will be fine." "What inner demons? How could they be Master's match?" Tang Zheng heard this and laughed loudly. "Ling Er is the most obedient." After saying this, he turned and stared at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. Being swept by his gaze, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's heart trembled. This feeling was absurd, and it made him furious. He scolded, "Tang Zheng, what are you looking at? Do you believe that I won't kill you?" "Haha, is that so? Then do you think you're a match for the inner demons?" Tang Zheng deliberately asked mysteriously. "Inner demons?" The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's expression became unnatural. He said, "The inner demons no longer exist. Don't use them to scare me." Chapter 849. Tang Zheng's meaningful smile made the 100 Transformation Star-Lord's hair stand on end. That was because he really couldn't figure out what had happened to Tang Zheng. Although Tang Zheng still looked like the old Tang Zheng, the existence of the inner demons was still unknown. If the inner demons hadn't been destroyed, then he would be in danger. The 100 Transformation Star-Lord had already experienced the power of the inner demons. He was both angry and afraid of this fellow. Tang Zheng walked step by step towards the 100 Transformation Star-Lord. The 100 Transformation Star-Lord retreated in panic and shouted, "Stop! Don't come any closer!" Tang Zheng smiled evilly and said, "Why, are you afraid? Don't come any closer." The 100 Transformations Star-Lord roared with all his might. "Hee hee, do you think I'll let you leave if I don't come any closer? My inner demons want to unify the world, and I still need a pawn like you. Once I control you, you can charge into the enemy lines for me." Tang Zheng sneered. The 100 Transformations Star-Lord knew very well what it felt like to have his fate in the hands of others. Naturally, he wasn't willing to end up like this. He had just suffered a lot at the hands of the inner demons. Seeing Tang Zheng like this, he naturally didn't dare to suspect that Tang Zheng wasn't the inner demons. He had already concluded that the inner demons must have controlled Tang Zheng. After all, even with his cultivation, he couldn't contend against the inner demons, let alone a small Tang Zheng. Seeing Tang Zheng approaching, the 100 Transformation Star-Lord was burning with anxiety. He roared, "I won't let you succeed." He actually didn't attack Tang Zheng. Instead, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rushed into the sky. He stomped on the cliff a few times and fled towards the top of the canyon at lightning speed. "Stop right there," Tang Zheng roared, scaring the 100 Transformations Star-Lord so much that he almost slipped and fell. Bang! With a loud bang, the entire canyon shook violently. The giant actually used both hands to grab onto the cliff and used all 4 limbs to climb out of the canyon. Seeing that the multiform Star-Lord and the giant had disappeared from the sky above the canyon, the corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled into a smug smile. "Hee hee," Tang Zheng laughed in a low voice. This multiform Star-Lord was really scared out of his wits by the inner demons. With just a few words, he actually managed to scare him into running away. In fact, although the inner demons were still in Tang Zheng's body, the inner demon's abilities were restrained and could not be used at all. Unless he controlled Tang Zheng's body, only then could he use that terrifying strength again. The 100 Change Star Sovereign did not know this at all, which was why he was scared away. In fact, Tang Zheng's action was not entirely a prank. He did it because he saw the fatigue on the Empyrean Fairy's face. The Empyrean Fairy had been tortured by the inner demons and had used up a lot of her power. The remnant soul in Tian Chanzi's body was also weakening, and his strength had decreased sharply. Although the 100 Transformation Star-Lord's strength had decreased greatly, his team was obviously not strong enough. Moreover, the opponent had the giant. Therefore, to be safe, he did not want to fight the 100 Transformation Star-Lord directly for the time being. There were too many unknowns. He did not want anything to happen to his people. Therefore, he had to intimidate the 100 Transformation Star-Lord. However, the 100 Transformation Star-Lord was also a smart person. As long as he had time, he would definitely figure out the trick. By then, he would understand that he had been fooled by Tang Zheng. However, by then, everyone would have recovered their power, and it would not be easy for him to deal with Tang Zheng. Humph, young man, you are quite smart. You used my name to scare this person away. The inner demon said with mixed feelings. Tang Zheng smiled and said, "That's because he is too stupid. You are smart enough, but Qi Yu's remnant soul has been hiding in your body for so long, and you did not even notice it. You are really too smart." The inner demons mocked. Tang Zheng was furious and said, "Qi Yu, come out and tell me clearly. What is your purpose in hiding in my body? Isn't it obvious? Once the time is up, you will be reborn." The inner demons said. Qi Yu immediately retorted, "Inner demons, will anyone believe your words? Tang Zheng, think about it yourself. Did I do anything bad in your body? I even helped you subdue the sword spirit and defeated the sword god. Have you forgotten? If I wanted to harm you, why would I take the risk to help you?" Tang Zheng was moved. Qi Yu had indeed helped him a lot. Haha, what's so hard to explain? He was protecting this body, not your life. Young man, you can't be so easily fooled by him, right? The inner demons directly exposed him. Qi Yu was furious. Inner demons, no one will think you are mute if you don't talk. Nonsense. Seeing that the two of them were at a loss for words, Tang Zheng frowned. He did not expect them to analyze anything useful from their conversation. The others had already surrounded them, their eyes filled with vigilance. After all, he had just called himself the inner demons. They could not help but be worried. "Are you Tang Zheng, or the inner demons?" the Empyrean fairy asked. "Of course I am Tang Zheng. Why don't you recognize me?" Tang Zheng smiled and said, "Then why did you say that you were the inner demons?" "Of course it was to scare the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. He made us so scared. How could we let go of such a good opportunity to scare him?" "Don't doubt Master. He is Master, not the inner demons. Ling Er knows." Ling Er said as she hugged Tang Zheng's arm. Xiaobai also happily jumped onto Tang Zheng's shoulder. He held his head and kept rubbing it, turning his hair into a chicken coop. Tang Zheng grabbed Xiaobai and pretended to be angry. "Stop." However, Little White grinned and actually did not give up, causing Tang Zheng to be helpless. Tian Shanzi had been looking at Tang Zheng with a scrutinizing gaze. After a long while, he said, "You are indeed not the inner demons. What about the inner demons? Did you really destroy them?" Tian Shanzi's expression was a little excited. "The inner demons have existed for so many years. No one has ever been able to destroy them. I did not expect them to die in your hands." "You are wrong. The inner demons are not dead," Tang Zheng said. "Not dead?" Tian Shanzi was shocked. "How can he not be dead? If he is not dead, then why are you not under his control?" Tang Zheng hesitated. Since the inner demons were imprisoned here by Qi Yu and the Yellow Emperor, then the remnant soul in Tian Shanzi's body was probably related to Qi Yu. "So," he said directly, "because I have Qi Yu's remnant soul in my body." The two of them fought against each other, and no one could do anything to the other. Naturally, it led to this situation. "Qi Yu?" Tian Shanzi's voice suddenly raised a few octaves. "You mean Qi Yu is not dead?" Tang Zheng saw him so excited and was about to say something. However, Qi Yu shouted in his body, "Tang Zheng, why are you telling him this? Do you know who he is?" "Who is he?" Tang Zheng was confused. This remnant soul was deliberately left on the bronze coffin by the Yellow Emperor, so it is the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor. He is my sworn enemy. If he hears that I am not dead, how will he punish you?" Qi Yu said bitterly. Tang Zheng's head thumped. The Yellow Emperor and Qi Yu were sworn enemies. Since the Yellow Emperor knew that Qi Yu was not dead, he would not let him go. Sure enough, Tian Chanzi's eyes had changed. He was looking at Tang Zheng with a murderous look. Qiyu is not dead. I will never let him live in this world and bring disaster to the world. Tian Chanzi roared. He slapped Tang Zheng with his palm. At such a close distance, even Tang Zheng himself could not resist, let alone the others. He did not expect Tian Chanzi to attack him. For a moment, the situation was very critical. Qiyu was so angry that he wanted to stomp his feet. He cursed, Tang Zheng, you are really stupid. Yellow Emperor, even if I, Qiyu, die, I will never forgive you. However, no matter how hard Qiyu shouted, there was nothing he could do. Stop! An angry roar burst out from Heaven Monk's mouth, only to see his palm steadily stopping in front of Tang Zheng's forehead. The wind from his palm blew at Tang Zheng's face, causing Tang Zheng's face to hurt. Tang Zheng was shocked. He quickly took a few steps back to avoid Tian Chanzi. As for the shout just now, he also heard it clearly. That was the real Tian Chanzi, not the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor. Obviously, at the critical moment, Tian Chanzi tried his best to control his body and save Tang Zheng's life. I won't allow you to hurt Tang Zheng. Tian Chanzi roared hysterically. Tian Chanzi, you dare to resist me? The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor was furious. This is my body. I make the decisions. No matter who you are not qualified to make the decisions, let alone use my hands to hurt Tang Zheng. Tian Chanzi was aggressive. Qiyu chuckled. I didn't expect Tian Chanzi to save your life at the critical moment. Now you don't have to worry anymore. The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor is already at the end of its tether and is rapidly weakening. Tian Chanzi can gradually control the body. As time passes, the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor will only become weaker and weaker. Then there is nothing to worry about. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. However, looking at Tian Chanzi talking to himself, he felt his heart ache. Shut up. If you dare to help Qiyu, I'll destroy your body. The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor threatened. Even if you destroy my body, I won't let you succeed. Tian Chanzi would rather die than submit. The two of them argued back and forth. Tian Chanzi's body trembled uncontrollably. It was obvious that he was in great pain. His own soul was fighting with the soul of the Yellow Emperor. Qiyu, do you have any way to help Tian Chanzi? Tang Zheng asked anxiously. Qiyu didn't care and said, why are you worried about him? He won't die. As for the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor, he's dead for sure. The remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor is closely related to the bronze coffin. As soon as the bronze coffin is opened, his remnant soul will quickly weaken. The more time passes, the weaker his remnant soul will become. In the end, his soul will scatter. All you need to do is wait. Looking at Tian Chanzi, who had fallen to the ground and was constantly twitching and even talking to himself, Tang Zheng was in great pain. He wanted to help, but didn't know how. As time passed by, Tian Chanzi's struggles gradually subsided. Finally, his legs kicked, and he stopped moving. Tang Zheng was stunned. Could it be that he was dead? Chapter 850. Tian Chanzi slowly opened his eyes, relaxed his eyebrows, and grinned. Silly boy, even if you wish for me to die, I won't die. My life is big. He stretched his muscles and bones, and sure enough, he was fine. He was full of energy. Seeing this familiar smile, Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. He punched Tian Chanzi's shoulder and said, It's good that you're not dead. It's good that you're not dead. Seeing how concerned you are about me, you can't bear for me to die, right? Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and laughed strangely. I just can't bear for you to die. I still have a lot of things for you to do. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. How heartless. Tian Chanzi crawled up, patted his clothes, and said, Damn it, if I, Tian Chanzi, was not strong enough, wouldn't I have been taken away by that remnant soul? This body of mine was obtained with great difficulty. How can I let him off so easily? You've been missing for a while. What happened? Why did you come to the prehistoric heavenly tomb? Tang Zheng asked. Sigh, it's a long story. Tian Chanzi sighed and spoke tirelessly. It turned out that when he had chased all the way to the island nation, he had discovered that the strange phenomenon in the sky was caused by the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array. Furthermore, this was led by the 100 Transformation Star-Lord, and it had already been completed. The demon clan had already returned, and he was powerless to reverse the situation. However, according to his observations, there were not many demon clan-s who had returned, so he was relieved. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he had been tracking the demon clan and discovered that they had actually split into two groups. One group directly took the ship back to Huaxia with great fanfare, and the other group quietly returned to Nanyang. After that, they took a big detour and entered Huaxia from the southwest border, and directly snuck into the 10,000 huge mountains. Tian Chanzi followed them all the way. He knew that the 100 Faces Star Sovereign had a deep meaning behind his actions. The demons on the ships were there to attract the enemy's attention. The most important thing was the people returning to the 100,000 mountains. When the Heaven Monk realized that they were actually plotting something, he observed them from afar. Unexpectedly, one day, he did not know what the 100 Transformations Star-Lord did, but something actually broke out of the ground from the graves in the prehistoric Heavenly Tomb. That battle was extremely huge, and it caused a huge tremor between heaven and earth, like an earthquake. The tremors detected by the outside world were caused by this. Tian Chanzi discovered that the things that broke out of the ground were actually sets of white bones. It was obvious that they were left behind after death, and were the experts from the ancient times who were buried in the prehistoric Heavenly Tomb. But what surprised Tian Chanzi the most was that one of the targets was actually a giant with flesh and blood. Tian Chanzi had lived for more than 1,000 years, but he had never heard of or seen such a giant. He was really shocked. The giant clan had long disappeared without a trace in the long river of history. Tian Chanzi naturally did not know, but he understood that all of this was troublesome. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the other demon clan-s were extremely excited, as if they had a secret technique to control these white bones and giants. In addition, there were also those demonic beasts. Under the orders of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, the white bones first landed in the canyon, followed by the demonic beasts. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the demon clan-s, hearing the movement at the bottom of the canyon, Tian Chanzi understood that something must have happened below. In order to investigate, he did not hesitate to chase down to the bottom of the valley. He just happened to see the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the others tying a chain to a huge bronze coffin, trying to pull it up from the canyon. Unexpectedly, at this time, a sudden change occurred. A black aura rose from the bronze coffin, and when the nearby demonic beasts and demon clan-s were touched by the black aura, they immediately fell to the ground and died. The crowd screamed and fled in all directions. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign seemed to have a plan, and ordered White Bones to attack again. It seemed that White Bones could fight against the black aura, and the two sides were entangled. At this time, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign ordered the other demonic beasts to tie the chain to the huge bronze coffin, and was about to pull it up directly. Tian Chanzi had been hiding in the dark to observe. He also wanted to know what was hidden in the huge bronze coffin that could make the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and the demon clan move so many people. The canyon was almost full of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's men. Although Tian Chanzi hid well, when the demonic beasts climbed up the cliff, he was still exposed. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes immediately swept over, and he shouted, "It's you," and was about to attack. Tian Chanzi knew that he was no match for the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, and it was impossible for him to escape now. His eyes locked onto the huge bronze coffin, and he made up his mind. Since he was going to die anyway, he would go and see what was in the huge bronze coffin that made the 100 Faces Star Sovereign value it so much. Perhaps he could destroy it before he died, so that the 100 Faces Star Sovereign would not succeed. When he flew to the top of the huge bronze coffin and was about to open the lid, he felt a mysterious power rush into his brain. Then, he was controlled. However, he was still conscious, but he was unable to control his body. He could clearly feel that his strength was rising, and finally reached a level that he could not reach. Then, he uncontrollably fought the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, and found that he was actually a match for him. Later, when Tang Zheng and the others arrived and opened the huge bronze coffin, the power of the remnant soul that controlled his body decreased sharply. What about the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul? Was it destroyed by you? Tang Zheng asked with concern. Tian Chanzi scratched his head and said non-committally, "It should have been destroyed. I can no longer feel his existence." What do you mean by should have been destroyed? Tang Zheng rolled his eyes speechlessly. He is so strong. How would I know if he was truly destroyed? In any case, I have already regained control of my body, and I can no longer feel his existence. Everything is over, so you don't need to worry, Tian Chanzi said casually. Tang Zheng looked at him deeply, and in the end, he nodded helplessly. Hee, I also have to thank the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul. Although he is no longer here, and my cultivation has decreased a lot from my previous peak, it is still much higher than before. Now, I am already at the 9th stage of the Yuanying realm, and am only a step away from the deity transformation realm, Tian Chanzi said excitedly. This was indeed a pleasant surprise. Although it was dangerous, he felt that it was extremely worth it. If it was any other cultivator, they would most likely clamor for this opportunity. Of course, if the huge bronze coffin had not been opened, then the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul would not have been damaged. Then, whether or not Tian Chanzi would have been able to regain control of his body was unknown. In short, this was Tian Chanzi's opportunity. When Tang Zheng heard this, he was happy for him and said, "This is your compensation. Your strength has increased greatly, so when we face the 100 Transformation Star-Lord in the future, we will have a greater chance of victory." Although the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Transformation Star-Lord had not yet fought, Tang Zheng believed that the Empyrean Fairy would definitely not lose to the 100 Transformation Star-Lord, so their strength was guaranteed. Tian Chanzi nodded and looked at Tang Zheng worriedly and said, "The inner demons and Qi Yu are in your body at the same time. Will your body be okay?" Tang Zheng also thought it through. Since he could not chase away the two of them, there was no need to be entangled in this matter. Moreover, there were two of them who could balance each other. If there was only one, then it would be terrible, and he would have to be on guard against him at all times. However, Tang Zheng also felt that he was unlucky, as if he had to deal with this kind of thing. Back then, it was Tian Chanzi who lived in his body, and now it was Qi Yu and the inner demons. Moreover, one was more powerful than the other. As for whether the future would be a blessing or a disaster, he had no way to predict it for the time being. He could only block soldiers with arms, water with an earthweir, and take one step at a time. The baleful Yin Qi here is very strong. Let's leave this place. Tian Chanzi looked at the canyon where the Yin Qi was raging and urged. Tang Zheng was about to say that they should leave, but the war soul in his hand began to buzz and tremble, and the sword's cry did not stop. "Master, this baleful Yin Qi is useful to me," the sword spirit suddenly said. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the War Soul sword was originally named after the War Soul. The War Soul was a baleful Yin Qi, so naturally, the War Soul sword also contained an extremely strong baleful Yin Qi. Later on, when the War Soul and the Sword Soul fused, the baleful Yin Qi became even stronger. However, Tang Zheng did not go to many places with dense baleful Yin Qi. The baleful Yin Qi in this canyon could actually suppress and imprison the inner demons. It could be seen how powerful it was. "Alright, then you can absorb this baleful Yin Qi." Tang Zheng was overjoyed. He knew that if the War Soul sword absorbed it, its quality would definitely improve. The War Soul sword was already a heaven-level magical wave, but he didn't know what it would be like if it was upgraded. "Everyone, wait a moment. The baleful Yin Qi here is so strong. If an ordinary person came here, they would definitely suffer. Why don't I use the War Soul sword to absorb it?" After Tang Zheng finished speaking, he threw the War Soul sword into the air and shouted, "Go!" The War Soul sword floated in the air. Immediately, a strong suction force came from the War Soul sword. In an instant, a whirlpool appeared on the War Soul sword. The aura of the heaven and earth was in chaos. The evil wind roared, and all the baleful Yin Qi surged in. In an instant, the War Soul sword's light increased greatly. The sword light was tens of thousands of feet long, illuminating the originally dark canyon as bright as day. So. Streams of sword chi danced in all directions, leaving deep marks on the cliffs of the canyon after being struck by the sword chi. After a long time, all of this calmed down. The air in the canyon was refreshed. Without the baleful chi, it actually seemed a little warm. Whiz! With a flash of sword light, the war soul sword flew back into Tang Zheng's hands. Tang Zheng looked at it carefully. There was actually a strange symbol on the war soul sword. This symbol was curved and curved, as if it had a profound meaning. Tang Zheng looked at it and actually couldn't understand it. What is this? The others all came over and stared at the symbol, puzzled. Tian Chanzi pinched his chin and muttered to himself for a long time. I have never seen this symbol before. Did the war soul sword not have it before? Tang Zheng firmly shook his head. The war soul sword was the magic treasure that had accompanied him the longest. He knew every single detail about it like the back of his hand. Tang Zheng scratched his head, not knowing what this mysterious symbol represented. It must have been a change after absorbing so much baleful chi. Sword spirit, do you know what this means? Tang Zheng had an idea and directly asked the sword spirit. Chapter 851. The sword spirit's voice sounded, Master, I feel that the war soul sword has undergone a qualitative change. As for the mysterious symbol, it seems to contain some kind of mysterious power that even I am unable to completely understand. Tang Zheng was stunned. Even the sword spirit was unable to understand it. What did that mean? As for the quality of the war soul sword, Tang Zheng could clearly feel that it had increased by a large amount. Tang Zheng, your war soul sword has already left its mortal body and transcended into a saint. Chi Yu's voice suddenly sounded. Transcendence into a saint? Tang Zheng was shocked. He had never heard of these words before. What did they mean? There are thousands of time weapon magic treasures, but there are corresponding ranks. In the past, you only understood the ranks of mortal grade magic treasures, such as heaven, earth, profound, and yellow. However, there are other ranks of magic treasures, breaking away from the mortal body and transcending into a saint. Then the magic treasure will become a holy artifact, and at this time, the magic treasure will become even more powerful. But there is one thing. All holy artifacts must have an artifact spirit. Your war soul sword has a sword spirit. This is the key to advancing to a holy artifact. It seemed that in order to restore a good impression, Chi spoke in detail. There are still many ranks of holy artifacts, and there are a total of 6 grades. Grade 1 is the lowest, and Grade 6 is the best. Your war soul sword has just crossed the threshold of Grade 1 holy artifact. Engel, Grade 1 holy artifact. Tang Zheng could not help but stroke the war soul sword. He had never thought that there would be a new level above the heaven grade magic treasure. For a moment, he was filled with emotions. In ancient times, there were many holy artifacts, but after the Battle of Zhuolu, the experts fell, and the number of holy artifacts gradually decreased. Especially in magic treasures, it was extremely difficult for an artifact spirit to appear, which was the key to restricting the appearance of holy artifacts. In ancient times, the weapon refiners refined magic treasures with artifact spirits, directly becoming holy artifacts. Later on, there were more and more weapon refiners, and there were only mortal-grade magic treasures left in the world. There were very few holy artifacts. Tang Zheng nodded. No wonder Tian Chanzi did not know about the holy artifact and never told me about it. It turns out that the holy artifact had already gradually disappeared in the long river of history. Actually, you already possess a sacred artifact. You just didn't know about it, Chi said. Tang Zheng was startled. He suddenly had an idea and said, You mean the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows? These were the only 2 magic treasures he had on him that he had never been able to see through. Smart. These 2 magic treasures are the divine weapons of Hou-Yi from ancient times. They are both sacred artifacts. However, you are temporarily unable to communicate with their artifact spirits, so you have yet to fully unleash their profundities. Tang Zheng's heart could not help but thump. He had always relied heavily on the heaven-shocking bow and the sun-shooting arrows, but it turned out that he had not fully unleashed their power. If he had truly unleashed their full power, What kind of scene would that be? He really couldn't imagine. Then, are there any other grades above sacred artifacts? Tangjing asked. He had learned his lesson. He had always thought that the heaven-level magic treasure was the limit. He didn't expect himself to be a frog at the bottom of a well. I'll leave this for you to discover. It's too early for you to know now. It will only increase your frustration and disturb your mind. It's not beneficial to your cultivation, Chiyu said, obviously not wanting to tell him. Tangjing frowned and said, You don't want to tell me, right? Do you have any other unknown motives? He no longer trusted Chiyu, so of course he wouldn't completely believe his words. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. I don't want to say anymore. Chiyu said helplessly. Ha ha ha, Chiyu, how does it feel to eat your own medicine? The inner demons suddenly laughed out loud. Young man, Chiyu did not lie to you this time. It is indeed not a good thing for you to know in advance. It is not beneficial to your cultivation. Hung, do I need you to say good things for me? Chiyu didn't appreciate it at all. Of course I don't want to say good things for you. I just don't want to trouble you. The inner demon snorted and retorted. Tangjung let out a sigh of relief. The inner demons and Chiyu's words were compared to each other. Chiyu really didn't lie. He couldn't help but feel gratified. These two souls kept each other in check and balance, which was indeed beneficial to him. Otherwise, if he listened to one side, he wouldn't even know if he was dragged into a ditch. Tangjung was talking with the two souls, but he didn't notice that the Empyrean fairy was staring at the war spirit sword with a complicated expression. She muttered to herself, You actually upgraded a magic treasure to a sacred artifact. It's really inconceivable. Tangjung suddenly heard this and stared at the Empyrean fairy as if he had just woken up from a dream. He asked, You also know about the sacred artifact? The Empyrean fairy nodded. Of course I know. Tangjung was delighted and patted his head. He was really too stupid. The Empyrean fairy was also an ancient person and had seen a lot. He was afraid that she was even more knowledgeable than Tian Chanzi. He could ask her these questions. Were there a lot of sacred artifacts in ancient times? The Empyrean fairy curled her lips and said, Do you think sacred artifacts are cabbages? How could there be a lot? When I was still young, there were already not many sacred tools. Only those with high statuses and powerful strength could be equipped with them. It was impossible for ordinary people to possess sacred tools. Otherwise, they would be met with a fatal disaster. You should understand the principle of a man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime, right? Tangjing nodded. Of course I understand. Hey, excuse me, what is a sacred artifact? You are confusing me. Tian Chanzi hurriedly shouted with a suspicious face. Tian Chanzi, you didn't have a sacred artifact at that time, right? I've never heard of it. Tian Chanzi shook his head. This is very clear. Sacred artifacts gradually decreased in the long river of history until they finally disappeared. Even if one or two artifacts were passed down occasionally, people didn't know that they were sacred artifacts. For example, Tian Chanzi, you only had 4 magic artifacts at that time: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. By the way, did you have an artifact spirit at that time? Tangjung spoke frankly with assurance and gradually sorted out his thoughts. Of course there was an artifact spirit, but it was pitifully few. If a magic artifact had an artifact spirit, its power would definitely increase greatly. Tian Chanzi said with longing. He had once imagined that his magic artifact had an artifact spirit, but it was something that could only be encountered by chance. It had to be at the right time, place, and people to have an artifact spirit. Tangjing nodded and said, But even if a magic artifact had an artifact spirit, it hadn't been promoted to a sacred artifact, right? Tian Chanzi shook his head blankly. Didn't I tell you before? I haven't even heard of the words sacred artifact. That's right. Although there are occasionally artifacts in the world, there is no way for them to be promoted to sacred artifacts. Therefore, this is the key to why sacred artifacts are unknown. But I want to tell you now, sacred artifacts are more powerful than heaven, earth, black, and yellow level magic artifacts, and they must have an artifact spirit. Tian Chanzi was enlightened. His eyes stared straight at the war soul sword, licked his lips, and said with envy, You brat, you're really lucky. You actually have a sacred sword. Do you know how many people don't even dare to dream about this? Tang Zheng laughed. His finger gently brushed the War Soul sword and said, "This is called strength, understand?" Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and joked, "Strength my ass, you've taken all the good things." Tang Zheng knew that this was probably closely related to the Sword Soul. Without a doubt, the Sword Soul was originally Qi Yu's item, so it was probably not as powerful as a sacred artifact. Although the Sword Soul's previous consciousness had been erased, its essence had not changed. Adding on the fact that it had absorbed so much balefulline qi, it was able to undergo a qualitative change. It was also because the Sword Soul's previous consciousness had been erased that although it knew that its quality had increased, it still did not know that it had become a sacred artifact. Tang Zheng, how do you know about the sacred artifact? Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. Didn't I tell you that there are 2 more souls in my body? They told me. Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at Tang Zheng and said, Qi Yu and the inner demons are people from ancient times, even earlier than me. When I was young, I occasionally heard rumors about Qi Yu. They are not good people, so you have to be careful. Seeing that she was so concerned about him, Tang Zheng smiled and nodded to thank her. Preposterous. Who is this little girl? How dare she talk about me like that? Inner demons shouted unyieldingly. You are not a good person, so why can't you say it? Tang Zheng retorted, if you are noisy again, I will directly silence you. Inner demons was angry, but there was nothing they could do. They coldly snorted a few times and did not dare to complain anymore. Empyrean Fairy is the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven. This Emperor of Heaven is a person who came after us. It is said that he is also very powerful. Inner demons, of course you don't know about them. Qi Yu suddenly said. Tang Zheng's head thumped. Qi Yu must have secretly hidden in his body to know about these things. In the future, he must be wary of him. There were some things he could not let him know. Qi Yu, do you know anything about the Emperor of Heaven? Tang Zheng asked. Qi Yu smiled bitterly. He came after me, so how could I know? However, since Ji Wuxiang said that Fuxi is a descendant of Fuxi, then this Emperor of Heaven is naturally not an ordinary person. However, in ancient times, the Fuxi clan had already declined. I just didn't expect them to rise again and produce an Emperor of Heaven. Tang Zheng was deep in thought. Fuxi was a legendary figure and was even more distant than Qi Yu and the Yellow Emperor. However, according to Qi Yu, Fuxi clan had already declined in ancient times, so Qi Yu knew very little about Fuxi clan. However, there was one thing that Tang Zheng was sure that Qi Yu definitely knew about, and that was the 4 symbols Venerables and the Witch clan. Back then, the Witch clan was sealed by Qi Yu, so it was impossible for him not to know. Moreover, the 4 symbols Venerables were damaged. If they were not repaired as soon as possible, it would always be a worry for Tang Zheng. When he asked this question, before Qi Yu could answer, the inner demons had already shouted, What? You have already subdued the 4 symbols Venerables? Qi Yu, why have all your treasures been taken away by this young man? Young man, well done. Chapter 852. The information revealed by the inner demons shocked Tang Zheng greatly. He hurriedly said, Qi Yu, now that the 4 symbols Venerable is damaged, you must know how to repair it, right? Qi Yu hesitated. In fact, he did have bad intentions. He had been waiting for an opportunity to seize Tang Zheng's body, but now that the inner demons had interfered, he had no choice but to appear. He was completely passive. Of course, he did not want Tang Zheng to recover the 4 symbols Venerable, but now that he was asked this question, if he did not tell the truth, he would not be able to get away with it. Yes, I know, Qi Yu said helplessly. As long as you return to the Witch tribe, there will naturally be a way to repair it. The 4 symbols Venerable has always been nourished by the ley lines of the 100,000 mountains. As long as it is connected to the ley lines of the 100,000 mountains, everything will be done naturally. The square of the Witch tribe is a huge formation. As long as the 4 symbols Venerable returns, the formation will naturally be activated. The 4 symbols Venerable can absorb the power of the ley lines and recover. Ley lines of the earth? Tang Zheng had a strange look on his face. Yes, Ley lines of the earth are the power of the earth. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth is not only contained in the air, but also in everything. Even the soil on the ground contains spiritual chi. However, the power of ley lines of the earth cannot be absorbed by ordinary people. Only through a magical formation can it be drawn out and used for oneself. Hee, you guys, the Julie tribe has many strange spells. This is something I have never heard of. The inner demons clicked his tongue in wonder. Chiyu snorted and said angrily, "How can you know all about the magic of the Julie tribe? Is that so? Since it is so magical, then say it. Young man, I believe it will be very useful to you. Force him to say it." The inner demons gloated. Inner demons, you. Chiyu flew into a rage. Although Tangzheng also wanted to know the magic of the Julie tribe, he did not want to push Chiyu too hard. That would be counterproductive. Stop arguing. Chiyu, I won't force you to tell me the Ninely tribe's magic. You just need to tell me why you imprisoned the witch tribe in the 100,000 mountains back then. This was a problem that had always troubled Tangzheng and even the shaman tribe. Back then, the 100 Faces Star Lord had analyzed that only Chiyu himself could imprison the witch tribe, and Tangzheng had also seen Chiyu lose in that illusion and even had his heart dug out. However, for a powerhouse like Chiyu, even if his heart was dug out, he might not necessarily die. For example, his heart of Chiyu had been preserved, and there was even a strand of remnant soul left in it. Chiyu hesitated, but seeing that Tangzheng seemed to be impatient, he quickly said, "I'll tell you. The shaman tribe was indeed imprisoned by me in the 100,000 great mountains. Back in the Battle of Zhuolu, after my defeat, my soul scattered, turning into strands of remnant souls to do what I have yet to do. One of them was to imprison the shaman tribe. The shaman tribe is a branch of the Ninely tribe. Why did you only imprison the shaman tribe?" Tangzheng asked curiously. Because the origin of the Ninely tribe is the shaman tribe. It's just that too many years have passed and many people no longer remember this matter. The shaman tribe is the core of the Ninely tribe. As long as the shaman tribe is not destroyed, the Ninely tribe will have the chance to create glory again. I know that after the Yellow Emperor won, there will no longer be a place for the shaman tribe in this world. I will imprison the shaman tribe in the 100,000 great mountains to recuperate and wait for the future to rise again. Chiyu spoke frankly with assurance. This content made Tangzheng's emotions surge. So the shaman tribe had such a great background. Back then, the core of the entire Ninely tribe was the shaman tribe. Even the elders of the shaman tribe did not know about this. "You're already dead. How can the shaman tribe make a comeback?" Tangzheng asked again. Chiyu chuckled. "Hee, the reincarnation of the heavenly Tao. Back then, the Yellow Emperor won. In the future, there will be a day when I, Chiyu, will win. Hasn't the shaman tribe already broken through the restriction and regained their freedom? If it wasn't for my coincidence, how could the shaman tribe regain their freedom? Haha, this is the reincarnation of the heavenly Tao. Everything is possible. How can you understand the mysteries within?" Tangzheng's heart trembled. In the unseen world, there were too many mysterious things that he was still unable to comprehend. However, since Chiyu had made such arrangements, he was afraid that he truly had the confidence to do so. Although time had passed and the sea had turned into mulberry fields, and after tens of thousands of years, this day had finally arrived. But in Chiyu's heart, this day had arrived, and that was his victory. The shaman tribe is not as powerful as before. How can you believe that they can recreate the glory of the past? Chiyu laughed. In this world, there is nothing that the shaman tribe can't do. When the time is right, the shaman tribe will rise. The Julie tribe will reappear in the world and achieve hegemony. Listening to his crazy laughter, Tangzheng's emotions surged. Talking to this kind of person was really a test of one's willpower. If he was not careful, he would be bewitched by him. Don't listen to his shameless boasting. If the shaman tribe was really so powerful, they wouldn't have been defeated by the Yellow Emperor. The inner demons suddenly jumped out and mocked. "Inner demons, you and I are irreconcilable," Chiyu roared. "Come on, you couldn't do anything to me back then. Now, you can't do anything to me." The inner demons were ready to provoke him. "Stop talking," Tang Zheng roared. As expected, the two of them quieted down. No matter how powerful they were in the past, at this moment, in Tang Zheng's body, they had no choice but to submit to Tang Zheng. "I'll ask you one last question." Tang Zheng could see that the inner demons were getting impatient, so he said, "Okay, I'll answer one more question. Don't ask me in the future. I won't answer even if you ask." Qi was obviously in a bad mood. Tang Zheng did not care and asked directly. Xiaobai was hatched in the holy land of the shaman tribe. What is its origin? Ever since Xiaobai was hatched, the restriction that imprisoned the shaman tribe was automatically removed. Was this also set up by you in the past? Qi was silent. The inner demon said first, "The origin of this little guy of yours is not simple. Even I can't see through it." "Qi, don't be silent. Hurry up and tell me, what is its origin?" Qi voice became very old. After a long time, he said, "I can't answer this question." "Ah, how can that be? Didn't you put it in the holy land of the shaman tribe?" Tang Zheng was shocked and incredulous. "It's true that I put it in the holy land, but what I put in back then was an egg, right?" Qi asked. Yes. Back then, the first time Tang Zheng saw Xiaobai, it was an egg floating on the fiery red magma. Moreover, there were murals in the cave. The murals showed a person with 9 main meridians holding the egg with both hands. Then, the egg emitted a burst of white light and nothing else. He tried to imitate it, but to his surprise, the egg actually hatched after absorbing his true qi. After a dazzling white light, little White descended into the world. Now, Qiyu said that even he did not know the origin of Xiaobai, which seemed to be a little unreasonable. "Qiyu, since you said you would answer my question, what's the point of hiding it? Just answer it directly, and I won't ask you any other questions." Tang Zheng thought that Qiyu was lying perfunctorily. "How am I hiding it? I really don't know the origin of Xiaobai." "Well, then I'll tell you everything. You can judge whether I'm lying to you or not." "I'm all ears. I've never seen Xiaobai before. I've only seen it in the shape of an egg. This egg has been passed down from the witch tribe. It's the sacred object of the witch tribe. No, it's the sacred object of the entire Ninely tribe. However, only the patriarch of each generation knows about the existence of the sacred object. The origin of this sacred object can no longer be verified, but rumor has it that it was born when the world was created. There was once an almighty ancestor of the shaman tribe who successfully hatched this egg and became your little White. That is the sacred beast of the shaman tribe. But later on, the sacred beast was said to have died and left behind an egg, which has been secretly worshipped by the witch tribe. I've also thought of a way to hatch it, but I've never succeeded. However, I also engraved that possibility in the murals, because the ancestors of the witch tribe said that this way, it could be hatched. Sacred beast. Tang Zheng was shocked, and subconsciously stroked Xiaobai who was on his shoulder. Did this little guy have such a great background? However, it was not the egg that was born when the world was created, but its descendant. Even so, it could be seen that its family background was actually related to the creation of the world. Tang Zheng was shocked and sighed, and a storm was set off in his heart. Because it's a sacred object, it has a mysterious power, so I used it as the core of the formation. Only by activating it and making it hatch can I unlock the formation and remove the restriction. I didn't expect you to succeed by accident. Even you were unable to hatch Xiaobai back then. Why did you make it so difficult? Aren't you afraid that no one will be able to hatch it? Qiyu said firmly. Since the ancestor has hatched it before, it means that there is a chance, so I also believe that it will succeed. If it doesn't succeed, it means that the day of the witch tribe's revival has not arrived. As long as it succeeds, the witch tribe's sacred beast will descend into the world, which means that the witch tribe will rise again. Tang Zheng's heart moved and he sneered. Xiaobai was hatched by me. He won't help you for your so-called hegemony, because he only listens to me. Qiyu was silent and did not answer. The inner demons praised. Amazing, amazing. Qiyu, your scheme is so powerful. I really admire you. I'm afraid that even the Yellow Emperor back then did not expect you to have so many tricks up your sleeves, right? Qiyu snorted and did not comment. Young man, let me tell you why he has evil intentions towards you. He has been lurking in your body all this time, waiting for the day when he will occupy your body, then control Xiaobai and complete his hegemony. He, because if he changed to another body, he would not be able to control Xiaobai at all. What a good scheme. The inner demons laughed. Tang Zheng felt a chill. Qiyu, this time bomb, had calculated so well. This time, if the inner demons did not coincidentally enter his body, Qiyu would be in great trouble one day, and he would not be able to resist. In the end, Qiyu occupied his body, and Xiaobai would definitely think that it was him, so he would obediently listen to Qiyu. Chapter 853. Seeing Tang Zheng's ashen face, Tian Chanzi and the others hurriedly asked him what was going on. Tang Zheng shook his head. There was no need to spread this matter. Since he knew about this matter, he had to be extra vigilant against Qiyu and not let him succeed. Let's leave this place. Since Qiyu didn't want to talk, Tang Zheng could only give up and say this. What do we do with this bronze coffin? Tian Chanzi pointed at the huge object in front of them and asked. Tang Zheng's eyes turned, and he curiously said, the inner demon's body is no different from a normal person's body. Why do they have to make such a big bronze coffin? Humph, this is the masterpiece of Qiyu and the Yellow Emperor. This bronze coffin can absorb all of the eviline energy between heaven and earth. This canyon is the place where the eviline energy is the densest. With such a large bronze coffin placed here, the coffin can absorb even more eviline energy. It's as thick as water and wraps around me. Otherwise, how could it have trapped me for so many years? The inner demons hatefully said. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the reason the bronze coffin was so big was not to store the inner demons, but to store the eviline energy. He was like a standard in a glass bottle, surrounded by the eviline energy that was like water. Hearing Tang Zheng's explanation, the others also suddenly realized. Square root, destroy this damn bronze coffin for me. I get angry just looking at it. The inner demons urged. Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea. He chuckled and with a wave of his hand, he put it into Sumeru world, but he didn't destroy it. Why did you put it away? Why didn't you destroy it? Tang Zheng shrugged and said, this bronze coffin can absorb eviline energy, so it can be considered a treasure. It would be a pity to destroy it. Even if it doesn't have any use, it's still an antique. There's probably only one such large bronze coffin in the world, so it's worth a lot. The inner demons were speechless. The few of them went up the canyon and looked down. The canyon was still gloomy and filled with corpses of demonic beasts. This time, more than half of the demonic beasts in the 100,000 mountains had died, and the 100 transformations Star Sovereign had suffered heavy losses. Where are we going now? Tian Chanzi asked. Tang Zheng already had a plan. He said, let's return to the shaman tribe first. The 4 symbols venerable is damaged. I need to repair it first. The group naturally did not object. They returned along the way, and when they saw the broken tombs, their expressions did not look good. These ancient experts, even in death, could not rest in peace. They were awakened by the 100 transformation Starlord using a secret technique. They charged and broke through the enemy lines, and in the end, not even their corpses remained. After leaving the prehistoric heavenly tomb, the air was clear. However, it was already late. The few of them rested not far away for the night. In the darkness of the night, there seemed to be countless pairs of eyes staring at them, but they acted as if they did not see them. Tang Zheng knew that the 100 transformations Star Sovereign must have sent demonic beasts to secretly monitor them. This was unavoidable, so why not let him see it openly? In any case, it wouldn't be long before he guessed that he had been tricked by Tang Zheng. The next day, at dawn, the few of them made a long journey to the shaman tribe. The shaman tribe seemed to be in ruins. Back then, in order to take out the heaven and earth profound stone under the plaza, Tang Zheng had dug up the entire plaza. Therefore, it was a complete mess. Seeing that, Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. The plaza was destroyed. Was the array still there? In the end, it proved that his worries were unnecessary. The array formation that Qiyu had set up was obviously not just on the surface. Even if the stone slabs on the surface of the plaza were all destroyed, the array formation was still intact. Tang Zheng summoned the four symbols venerable. When the gigantic body appeared, it immediately split into two, then into four, and then into four. They automatically walked to the corresponding place and stopped moving. It was as if they had returned to their original appearance when they were protecting the shaman clan. Looking at this familiar scene, Tang Zheng could not help but feel a little absent-minded. He still remembered the shocking scene when he walked out of the house and saw the four symbols venerable for the first time. It will take at least a day for the four symbols venerable to fully recover, Chiyu said. Then we'll stay here for a day, Tang Zheng said without hesitation. The others agreed. Fortunately, these houses were built very firmly. Although they had been gone for a long time, they were not in a dilapidated state. After tidying them up, they could still be lived in. The Empyrean fairy seemed to like the environment here. She took a deep breath and said, "This place is much better than the big cities outside." Tang Zheng could not help but laugh. She was an ancient person and had long been used to the ancient environment. Of course, she would have such feelings. However, speaking of which, if the 100,000 mountains were developed, it would definitely be more beautiful than any scenic spot in the world. Of course, this was just his imagination. It was impossible to realize. There were still many monsters lurking in the 100,000 mountains. How could ordinary people get close? The Empyrean fairy leaped up like a dancing fairy. She flew up to the top of a branch and looked into the distance. Ling did not know why, but she pursed her lips and actually looked a little sad. Her eyes were red. Ling, what's wrong? Master, this place is very similar to my home. A long time ago, I lived in the mountains with my grandfather. Aya, Master, look at Ling. Wow, good job. Something is drilling into the soles of Ling-er's feet. Suddenly, Ling-er made a big fuss and giggled incessantly. Hee, so comfortable. It also feels like I'm scratching an itch. Wow, Master, my true energy is increasing. Really? Tang Zheng was shocked. Although he felt the surge of energy flowing through his feet, he didn't have the slightest reaction. Ling-er actually had a reaction. It was really strange. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. That's right, since this energy could be injected into the four symbols venerable, then it could also be used by Ling-er. Because Ling-er was transformed from a ginseng, absorbing the spiritual energy in the soil was a natural thing. Ling-er, focus and absorb as much of this energy as possible, Tang Zheng instructed. Yes, Ling-er will listen to Master. Ling-er nodded and circulated her energy. In an instant, Ling-er's body was suffused with a sparkling and translucent light. Roots actually grew from her feet and pierced into the ground. The energy entered her body through the roots. Upon seeing this, the Empyrean fairy and Tian Chanzi also gathered around and watched this scene curiously. Tian Chanzi clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "This girl is really lucky. Just now, I took a look at this large formation. It's really amazing. The spiritual energy in the entire 100,000 mountains is converging here. Chiyu set up this formation in the past is really too amazing. When this converging energy enters the body, it will quickly transform into vital chi and increase the cultivation level. It's much faster than this girl's cultivation speed." The Empyrean fairy also nodded. This is her opportunity. It's harder for plants to cultivate into spirits than animals, because animals have their own consciousness. With consciousness, cultivation will be much easier. It's very difficult for plants to cultivate their own consciousness, so the demonic beasts you see are almost all animals. Tang Zheng suddenly understood. He hadn't thought about this problem before. It turned out that Ling-er's current situation was really a huge opportunity. She's simple and honest, so it's a blessing for her to be taken in by you. You can protect her. Otherwise, if she falls into the hands of other people or demonic beasts, she'll be a great tonic. Eating her will not only increase one's lifespan, but also increase one's power. Tang Zheng's head trembled, and he said, "Stop, don't say any more. I'll protect Ling-er and not let her come to any harm." Chapter 854. As time passed, Linger's entire body was bathed in a burst of light. When the sky gradually darkened and the light dissipated, her eyes flashed with a bright light. Her face immediately blossomed into a smile as she cheered, "Master, Linger has become powerful." Saying this, she stretched out her arm and a vine shot out from her palm. With a bang, it struck a distant rock and the rock immediately shattered. This move was as fast as lightning and as powerful as thunder. It was definitely a realm only an expert could reach. Tang Zheng stared at her without blinking and cried out in surprise, "Linger, your cultivation has actually reached the 9th grade of Anidia." Linger's original cultivation was only at the early stage of Anidia. Now, she had actually jumped to the 9th grade of Anidia. It was truly a rocket speed. "You're much more powerful than me," Tang Zheng sincerely praised. Linger's face was like a peach blossom as she happily said, "Linger is not as powerful as Master. Master is the most powerful. The two of you should stop flattering each other. Linger is in a special situation. The array formation in this square is indeed extraordinary. The power it gathers is no small matter. In addition, Linger's body is a condensation of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Naturally, her ability to absorb and store energy is much stronger than normal people. Otherwise, if a normal person absorbed so much energy, they would probably have exploded long ago." Empyrean Fairy explained. Tang Zheng suddenly understood. So that's how it is. No matter what, Linger's cultivation has greatly increased. This is something worth celebrating. In the future, she will at least have the ability to protect herself. Linger was like Tang Seng's meat. If she did not have the ability to protect herself, anyone could take a bite out of her. That would be truly dangerous. The night was like water. Everyone went to bed early. Tomorrow morning, the 4 symbols venerables would finish repairing. In the night, rustling sounds could be heard in the forest. Little White, who was lying on Tang Zheng's bed, twitched its ears and immediately stood up. It stared out of the window and squeaked. Tang Zheng got up and touched Xiaobai, saying, "There's movement." Xiaobai nodded seriously. "Looks like the 100 Faces Star Sovereign realized that he was tricked by me, so he chased after me," Tang Zheng said thoughtfully. He got off the bed and walked out, only to find that the other 3 had also come out. They looked at each other, and Tang Zheng said, "The 100 Faces Star Sovereign is here. Humph, let's make sure he doesn't return this time." The Empyrean Fairy said. She knew how powerful the 100 Change Star-Lord was, so she did not swear that she would definitely get rid of him. For experts of their level, it was easier said than done to get rid of him. The noise in the forest grew louder and louder, rumbling as if there was a magnificent army. Bang, bang, bang. Rows of tall trees were snapped in half. Pairs of cold eyes sparkled in the night like burning will-o'-wisps. "Tang Zheng, get the hell out here." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's roar came from afar, and the sound waves rushed over. The high walls of the witch tribe were actually shaken by the sound waves, making creaking sounds. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign slowly rose into the air, looking down at everything in the tribe from above. He happened to see Tang Zheng and the others. When enemies met, their eyes were exceptionally red. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes were filled with killing intent as he said, "Tang Zheng, how dare you lie to me? You even dare to lie and say that you were the inner demons. Although I don't know what method you used, the inner demons are already dead." "Nonsense, you're the one who's dead." The inner demons were indignant, but they could only complain to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng took a few steps forward, looked at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign in the air, and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Are you really so sure that the inner demons are dead? If you guessed wrong, then your life will be in danger." "Humph, now that things have come to this, do you still want to lie to me? Everything you say and do along the way cannot escape my eyes and ears. Do you think I don't know? If you were the inner demons, humph, then the people around you would have died long ago, or become your slaves." Tang Zheng nodded and laughed in ridicule. "Hee, you've actually become smarter. You finally admit it. You're so daring to play with me. Today, I'll let you die in this 10,000 mountains." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign said resolutely. Tang Zheng asked with a smile, "Do you think you can kill us all?" The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes flickered as he said, "My demonic beast's army will definitely crush all of you." With that, he waved his hand and immediately gave the signal to attack. With a rumble, groups of demonic beasts tried to attack the tribe's walls. "Everyone, be careful," Tang Zheng reminded. Just as he was about to rush up, he realized that someone had beaten him to it. The Empyrean fairy's figure flashed, and like an arrow leaving the bow, she shot towards the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and shouted, "He's mine. No one can snatch him from me." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign also faced the Empyrean fairy and shouted, "Since you dare to challenge me, I'll let you know how powerful I am." With a wave of his hand, the aura of heaven and earth changed in an instant. A cloud of water vapor condensed and directly turned into a ferocious beast and bit towards the Empyrean fairy's face. The Empyrean fairy's hand flashed, and the mountain river map appeared in her hand. She threw it into the sky, and with a flash of light, the beast disappeared without a trace, sucked into the mountain river map. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes flickered, and he said in surprise, What a powerful magic treasure. It's actually a sacred weapon. Do you think you're the only one with a sacred weapon?" As soon as he finished speaking, the air in front of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign shook, and a black light flashed, and a black banner appeared. There were complicated patterns on the banner, and it gave off a mysterious feeling. "I'll let you have a taste of the power of my sky water banner," the 100 Faces Star Sovereign shouted, and with a wave of his arm, the banner flickered, and in the originally clear night sky, there was a bright moon, and the moonlight was like silver. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and heavy rain poured down. The strangest thing was that there were no clouds in the sky. The pattering raindrops seemed to contain a mysterious power, falling from the sky, and all of them were directed at the fairy of the 9 heavens. The Empyrean fairy became the target of public criticism, but her expression did not change, and she shouted, "Mountain river map, absorb." The mountain river map produced a terrifying suction force, and the overwhelming raindrops were all sucked into it, but the Empyrean fairy was unharmed. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign did not care and shouted angrily, "This mountain river map is really not simple, but I haven't used the power of my sky water banner yet. Continue to take the attack." The sky water banner shook, and for no reason, a flood fell from the sky, as if it had the power to destroy everything. Like a raging dragon, it rushed toward the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy's expression turned cold, knowing that the power of this attack was far stronger than before. She did not dare to be careless and shouted, "Do you think you're the only one who can summon water? My mountain river map contains everything in the world. How can it not have water?" She pointed her finger at the stately painting, and a torrential flood rushed out from the painting to meet the water column that was like a raging dragon. Boom! The two water columns collided in midair, and it was difficult to tell who would win, and they were in a stalemate. Both sides gritted their teeth and kept urging their power, trying to defeat each other in one go. However, this was obviously an extravagant hope. The two were evenly matched, and this kind of battle was a battle of attrition. As for the others, they had already chosen their opponents. Tian Chanzi originally wanted to deal with the giant, but Tang Zheng beat him to it and had already fought with the giant. Tian Chanzi had to fight with the other monstrous beasts. His power had increased greatly, and he was now a 9th grade Yuanying, which was far stronger than these monstrous beasts. Therefore, he was no match for them at all. One by one, the monstrous beasts fell at his feet, and blood flowed like a river. Ling did not stay out of it. She had never fought before, but now that her power had increased greatly, she could not help but join in the battle. There were also some monstrous beasts whose cultivation was lower than hers, so she had already defeated a few of them. However, there were many monstrous beasts, and it was her first battle, so she could not help but be flustered. In a moment of carelessness, a monstrous beast sneaked up on her from behind and slapped her with its claw, as if it wanted to smash her into a pile of minced meat. Squeak, squeak. Little White's voice suddenly rang out. A beam of fire shot up into the sky, and the raging flames wrapped around the demonic beast. It let out a miserable cry and hurriedly retreated. How could it have the chance to attack Ling Er? Tang Zheng had specially instructed Xiao Bai to protect Ling Er. Xiao Bai was dutiful. How could he let these monstrous beasts succeed? Tang Zheng's battle was also very intense. The giant relied on its huge body to suppress him everywhere, causing Tang Zheng to not dare to let his guard down. However, his war soul sword had already become a sacred artifact. Even if it was the same heaven-flying immortal sword technique, its power would multiply in his hands. Swish, swish, swish. The war soul sword had already opened a few huge wounds on the giant's body, causing blood to flow out. The giant roared a few times, but it did not fall down. Instead, its ferocious nature was aroused, and the more it fought, the braver it became. The giant did not have any magic treasures and completely relied on its own body. Moreover, its body was as tough as steel, and if not for the war soul sword being incomparably sharp, it would not have been able to harm it. The giant's lantern-like eyes stared fixedly at Tang Zheng, and its fists and feet immediately followed the direction of its eyes and attacked Tang Zheng. Bang! The attack missed, and a deep pit appeared on the ground. His arm directly swept across the city wall, and with a boom, a large hole appeared on the city wall. Tang Zheng was shocked. This big guy's attack power was not inferior to the Four Symbols' Venerable One, and it had its own consciousness. If it was a one-on-one fight, it would be even stronger than the Four Symbols' Venerable One. The Four Symbols' Venerable One still needed his control in order to have such a powerful fighting strength. In ancient times, when the giant clan still existed, there were still quite a few of these giants. It could be seen how tragic the battle was. At the very least, the scene he saw from Qi Yu's illusion was deeply engraved in his memory, something he would never forget for the rest of his life. When the giant saw that he was unable to attack Tang Zheng from beginning to end, and that his body had been cut by the war soul sword instead, he was both angry and anxious. His attacks became even more ferocious, as if he had gone mad. In an instant, the city wall was almost completely destroyed by him, and deep pits of varying sizes appeared on the ground, as if it had been struck by a meteorite. Although Tang Zheng was unable to kill his opponent immediately, fighting with an expert of this level was quite helpful in increasing his fighting strength. The more he fought, the braver he became, and the more proficient he became in the heaven-flying immortal sword technique. The horizon gradually lit up, and when the first ray of sunlight shone on the ground, all that could be seen was a scene of devastation and corpses everywhere. Boom! Chapter 855. The Four Symbols Venerable opened his eyes. His eyes flickered with light as if they were alive. This was something that had never happened before. Boom! The four Symbols Venerables moved at the same time. They leaped over the crumbling walls and arrived in front of the giant. The giant was even taller than the four divine beasts. However, the four divine beasts exerted their strength together and coordinated their steps as if they were one. Boom! Boom! For hammer-like, fists hit the giant's waist. Roar! The Four Symbols Venerable let out a heart-wrenching scream as he staggered backwards. However, the Four Symbols Reverend did not give the giant a chance to catch his breath. With a flash of his body, he immediately grabbed the giant's four limbs. Thump! The giant fell to the ground, causing the ground to tremble incessantly. It even crushed the few demonic beasts below into meat patties. Tang Zheng watched this scene in astonishment. In the past, the Four Symbols Venerables required him to personally control them in order to unleash their enormous power. However, at this very moment, without his control, the might of the Four Symbols Supreme Beasts was even greater than before. Moreover, he saw a trace of spiritual aura in the Four Symbols Venerable's eyes. It was as if the Four Symbols Venerable truly possessed life. This was something that had never happened before. The eyes of the Four Symbols Venerables had always been filled with chaos. They did not have eyes at all. However, at this moment, they seemed to be human. Not only has the Four Symbols Venerable recovered, his strength has also increased by a level. In fact, he has even gained consciousness. Tang Zheng's heart thumped violently. When the inner demons had told him about the four divine beasts, He had thought that the four divine beasts must have had consciousness. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, the four symbols venerables actually recovered their consciousness. This was truly too amazing. With self-awareness, the four symbols' strength was clearly a level higher than Tang Zheng's control. His eyes were burning. He wanted to go up and help, but he found that there was no need for him. The giant's four limbs were grabbed by the four symbols venerable. It struggled incessantly, trying to break free and regain its freedom. However, the four symbols venerables held him firmly, so he couldn't break free at all. Moreover, the four symbols venerables all ran in different directions. Boom, boom. The ground trembled. The four symbols venerables were like wild horses that had broken free of their reins. Not only were they powerful, but they were also very fast. Tang Zheng had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and a word popped up in his mind: dismemberment by 5 horses. This scene was the best example. The four supremes each charged toward the other, and in an instant, the giant's body was straightened. His struggle instantly became more and more intense. Clearly, he understood that he was at a critical juncture of life and death. However, the four symbols venerables continued to flee silently, leaving behind deep tracks on the ground. They did not give the giant any chance to retaliate at all. Roar! The giant let out a heart-wrenching scream as streaks of blood appeared on its body. Bang! A muffled sound rang out as the giant exploded from within. Blood filled the air as it was split into 4 large pieces. It couldn't be any more dead. Tang Zheng swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was deeply shocked by this scene. The ferocity of the four symbols venerable far exceeded his imagination. Moreover, the violent and vicious aura they emitted caused him to be shocked. This murderous aura was condensed from countless battles. It was definitely not something that could be cultivated overnight. The four symbols venerable threw away the severed limbs in disgust and suddenly turned their heads. 4 pairs of eyes looked at Tang Zheng in unison. Tang Zheng's heartstrings trembled. Those eyes contained a soul-stirring demonic power. Even with his firm will, his heart could not help but sway. Bang, bang, bang. The four symbols venerable walked toward Tang Zheng in unison, emitting a biting, cold, murderous aura and vicious aura. Tang Zheng's brows furrowed. He had a bad premonition. The four symbols venerable seemed to have broken free from his control. Tang Zheng, the four symbols venerable has already regained consciousness. It's my demonic pet. I'll lend it to you for the time being. Chi Yu's voice rang out. There was a hint of pride in it. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He said, "You're saying that the four symbols venerable only listens to your orders?" Hee, of course. It's my demonic pet, so of course it only listens to my orders. However, I'm temporarily residing in your body right now, so I'll lend it to you. Chi Yu said. Tang Zheng did not comment. He hurriedly circulated his inner energy. With a thought, he attempted to communicate with the four symbols venerable and control it. However, his eyes immediately dimmed. There was actually no reaction at all. The mysterious connection from before had completely vanished. He felt dejected. He did not think that restoring the four symbols venerable this time would cause such an unforeseen event. He did not know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. The good thing was that he would have such a powerful helper in the future. The bad thing was that the four symbols venerable no longer listened to his orders. Chi Yu, so you already had this in mind when you told the young man how to restore the four symbols venerable. Hee, you're really cunning. The inner demons jumped out and said jokingly, "Inner demons, don't talk nonsense." In the past, the four symbols venerable did not truly awaken. This time, with the help of the formation, it absorbed enough energy and awakened its consciousness. This is also a coincidence. Chi Yu immediately retorted. Tang Zheng remained silent. He could not guess whether this was Chi Yu's doing on purpose for the time being. In any case, he would always be on guard against the two of them. The four symbols venerable looked down at Tang Zheng from above. Tang Zheng raised his head and looked at it. When their gazes met, Tang Zheng dismissed all distracting thoughts and ordered, "Deal with those monsters." The four symbols venerable did not say anything. It turned around and attacked the monster horde. Tang Zheng could not figure it out anyway. so he might as well make the most of it. As for what would happen in the future, who could say for sure? With the addition of the four symbols venerables, the exhausted cultivators who had been besieged by the demonic beasts relaxed. They watched as the four symbols venerables slaughtered the demonic beasts in every direction. Their four gigantic bodies were like killing machines, extremely efficient. The corpses of the monsters were scattered all over the forest. Some were hanging from the treetops, some were in large pits, and some were lying in the ruins of the city walls. Tang Zheng turned his gaze and stared at the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star-Lord who were fighting fiercely in the air. The two of them had already exchanged countless blows. All sorts of abilities were thrown back and forth. It was extremely intense. Tang Zheng could not help but sigh in amazement. A battle of this level was truly fascinating. He could not help but look forward to when he could become so powerful. The Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star-Lord had profound cultivation. After fighting for half the night, they were not tired at all. They were still surrounded by danger. The four symbols venerable Sky Water Banner summoned a torrential flood. After the Empyrean Fairy summoned the flood, she also summoned a huge mountain. It fell from the sky and smashed directly at the 100 Faces Star-Lord. The 100 Faces Star-Lord continuously channeled his power. The Sky Water Banner flickered, and the torrential flood blocked the huge mountain. However, the huge mountain was too heavy. It fell bit by bit, and the water spread in all directions. Boom! The water exploded, and the huge mountain fell heavily. The 100 Faces Star-Lord was directly crushed under the mountain. The ground shook violently as if there was an earthquake. The four symbols venerable was crushed under the mountain. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Tang Zheng was extremely shocked. He glanced at Tian Chanzi and Linger from the corner of his eyes. Linger was already dumbfounded. Her cherry mouth was wide open and her little tongue was sticking out. The mountain river map is actually so powerful. It can even summon a huge mountain. What else is in the map? The mountain river map was different from ordinary magic treasures. It had its own universe. It was like another world. It had mountains, rivers, plants, and trees, and could be summoned for one's own use. Tang Zheng had also obtained the mountain river map before, but he could not use these magical powers. The Empyrean Fairy's expression didn't relax. She was still serious as she stared at the mountain without blinking. Suddenly, the huge mountain shook. Even the ground shook as if there was an earthquake. Tang Zheng was shocked. He knew that the 100 Faces Star-Lord was not dead even after being crushed by the huge mountain. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out as the mountain exploded. Rubble flew everywhere like meteors, shooting in all directions. Dodge! Tang Zheng stomped out and hurriedly stood in front of Linger to protect her. With the holy armor shield in front of him, a series of pong, pong, pong sounds rang out as wave after wave of powerful energy surged out from the holy armor shield. The sorcerer tribe was in ruins. It was as if they had been hit and collapsed. There were deep pits on the ground, like the surface of the moon. The sorcerer tribe was the root of the sorcerer tribe. Now that it was destroyed, Tang Zheng was heartbroken. If the sorcerer tribe saw this, they would be heartbroken. The rain of rocks stopped. Tang Zheng removed the holy armor shield. The ground in front of him had completely caved in. It was a huge pit. The celestial master of 100 Faces stood in the pit in a sorry state. His clothes were in a mess, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. His originally delicate face had turned blue, and his eyes seemed to spit fire as he stared at the Empyrean maiden. Where did your mountain river map come from? Why is it so powerful? The 100 Faces Star-Lord roared angrily. The Empyrean Fairy snorted and did not answer. Seeing this, the 100 Faces Star-Lord was angry and anxious. Obviously, the mountain river map was more powerful than his celestial water banner. Their cultivation levels were almost the same, but due to the difference in their treasures, he was no match for the Empyrean Fairy. He was not reconciled. Previously, he was infatuated with the inner demons and was scared. Then, he was played by Tang Zheng. Now, he was defeated by the Empyrean Fairy who came out of nowhere. He was in a sorry state. This was simply a great humiliation. One had to know that even in ancient times, Multiform Star-Lord was a ruthless character. He had always been the one to bully others, and no one had ever bullied him. Therefore, he treated those weaker than him as toys. Back in Mount Buzhou, he wanted to keep Tangjing and the others as his toys. But now, he realized that the power of the toys was too strong. It was beyond his imagination, and his life was in danger. Run. Although he was burning with anger, he did not completely lose his mind. He knew that staying here would not do him any good. Moreover, Tangjing and the others were watching from the side. He was especially wary of the Four Symbols Reverend. Just now, the Four Symbols Reverend had cleanly dismembered the giant he had painstakingly resurrected. This scene immediately reminded him of the stories he had heard about the Four Symbols Reverend before he was imprisoned in Mount Buzhou. The Four Symbols Reverend was not a kind person. He was ferocious and cruel. Moreover, the Four Symbols Reverend who now had his own consciousness was not the same as before. He was definitely a big threat to him. Chapter 856. 100 Change. Star Sovereign's expression changed when his thoughts were seen through. However, he pretended to be calm and said, "I think you're the one who wants to escape." Empyrean Fairy laughed mockingly and said, "Is that so? Then let's see who will escape." With a point of her finger, the mountain and river map flew toward 100 Change Star Sovereign. The light of 100 Change Star Sovereign's sky water banner was very dim and was far inferior to the mountain and river map. Seeing the mountain and river map flying over, 100 Change Star Sovereign did not dare to argue anymore. He jumped out of the deep pit and fled into the forest. Tangjing and the others were dumbfounded. This 100 Change Star Sovereign was really a genius. He was still vowing to kill the Empyrean Fairy a second ago, and the next second, he was running away like a rabbit. He really escaped. "Do you think I'll let you have your way?" Empyrean Fairy said coldly. Just as she was about to chase after him, she heard a buzzing sound coming from the forest. The demonic beasts that had escaped were actually running back. Even 100 Change Star Sovereign retreated in a sorry state with an ugly look on his face. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A few huge demonic beast heads flew out from the forest and landed heavily on the ground, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Empyrean Fairy stopped abruptly and looked suspiciously at the dense forest. Even Tangjing and the others quieted down and stared intently at the front. The buzzing sound became louder and louder. A few trees fell to the ground and a few spinning things appeared in the sky. The buzzing sound came from these things. These things looked like bamboo hats, but were much bigger than bamboo hats. It was unknown how they could fly in the sky. "What are these?" The few of them muttered in their hearts. They could actually force the demonic beasts to retreat. Even 100 Change Star Sovereign had retreated. Tangjing and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. Obviously, they did not know what these things were. 100 Change Star Sovereign's shoulder was dyed red. This was the blood that was not there earlier. Could it be that he was injured by these bamboo hat-like things? What was it that could injure 100 Change Star Sovereign? The few of them became nervous. Rustle. With a slight noise, a few silhouettes came out of the forest and stood at a distance. Tangjing's pupils shrank because he saw a familiar face, Fair-Faced Flying Dragon. Fair-Faced Flying Dragon had disappeared without a trace after they parted ways in the mausoleum of the first Qin Emperor. As for his origin, Tangjing had no idea. Seeing him again today, Tangjing couldn't help but be surprised. Fair-Faced Flying Dragon had nearly died at the hands of Qin Shi previously. Who knew what he was up to this time? Tangjing's gaze swept past him, then he looked at the others. They were all unfamiliar faces, and the person standing at the very front was wearing a mask. A mask! Tangjing's heart stirred as he faintly remembered the information he had searched for in Jian Shisan's mind using the soul-searching technique. Azure Dragon Hall's High Lord. Wasn't he just wearing a mask all the time? Could it be that Fair-Faced Flying Dragon was from the Azure Dragon Hall? Actually, Fair-Faced Flying Dragon was so powerful. In this world, other than the Azure Dragon Hall, there was no other place that had such a powerful martial artist. As for the other unfamiliar faces, as well as the bamboo hat that was spinning in the air. It made Tang Zheng think of another thing. Flying guillotine. Legend had it that the Flying Guillotine was the most mysterious assassin team in the Azure Dragon Hall. Every one of them was at least a master-level martial artist, but no one had seen them in these past few years. This was probably the Flying Guillotine of the Azure Dragon Hall. 100 Change, Star Sovereign stopped and asked in a flustered and exasperated manner, "Who are you people?" The High Lord took a step forward and said indifferently, "Azure Dragon Hall." His voice was neither fast nor slow, but it was full of pressure. It was as if he was speaking beside everyone's ears, causing their eardrums to hurt. "So you are from the Azure Dragon Hall." Although 100 Change Star Sovereign lived in seclusion, he had already heard the name of this organization. What martial artists? In ancient times, martial artists and cultivators were of the same origin, but now they are killing each other. 100 Change Star Sovereign said. The High Lord said meaningfully, "With the times, this society is progressing. The situation in ancient times does not represent the current situation. Moreover, you cultivators have to fight to the death. So why can't we, martial artists, fight to the death with you cultivators? That depends on whether or not you have the ability." 100 Change Star Sovereign said hatefully. The High Lord laughed strangely and pointed at the bloodstain on 100 Change Star Sovereign's shoulder. "Haven't you already seen it? That was because you ambushed me. I was careless and fell into your trap." 100 Change Star Sovereign angrily roared. Just now, he was only concerned with escaping from the Empyrean Maiden, but he did not expect to be surrounded by the Flying Guillotine that fell from the sky as soon as he entered the forest. The Flying Guillotine almost wrapped around his head. If it had really wrapped around his head, he was afraid that his head would have been separated from his body. Fortunately, he had discovered it in time and quickly dodged. Otherwise, his shoulder would have been injured more than this. This group of people had a strong background. If it was one-on-one, 100 Change Star Sovereign was confident that he could deal with them all. However, when they were together, their strength was multiplied. Moreover, he had gone through an entire night of fighting and killing, so he had consumed a lot of energy. Moreover, he was already injured under that huge mountain, which was why he was in such a difficult situation. The High Lord laughed in a low voice. 100 Change Star Sovereign, if you are injured, then so be it. You still have so many excuses. This is not the style of an ancient expert. 100 Change Star Sovereign's eyes trembled. You seem to know me quite well. Of course. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. I know a little bit about everyone's background. Otherwise, how would I dare to come here? The High Lord was full of confidence. Is that so? You really think that these people can deal with me? The High Lord said, not only to deal with you, but also those people. He pointed at Tang Zheng and the others. Tang Zheng and the others' pupils shrank as they stared at the High Lord. This stance was really big. The Azure Dragon Hall had always been mysterious. It was fine if they did not appear, but when they did, they actually planned such a big scheme. It was shocking and also amazing the other party's ambition. The Empyrean Fairy stared at the other party. You boast that you know all of us. Could it be that you know me as well? The Great Lord pointed at the fair-faced flying dragon beside him and said, My Azure Dragon Hall's fair-faced flying dragon has met the mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens once. Of course, I can trace your origin and know your origin. The Empyrean Fairy's eyes flashed as she stared at fair-faced flying dragon without blinking, saying, I never thought that you would actually be able to escape from Qin Shi Huang's Taya sword. Fair-faced flying dragon chuckled. With a flick of his wrist, sword light flashed and a long sword filled with killing intent was placed horizontally in front of his chest. Taya sword. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy cried out in alarm at the same time. Back then, Qin Shi Huang had used the Taya sword to kill fair-faced flying dragon. Later on, the connection between the sword and the Qin Shi Huang was severed, and its whereabouts were unknown. It turned out that fair-faced flying dragon had used some unknown method to steal the Taya sword. Tang Zheng was incomparably shocked. He had seen the Taya sword's might before. Moreover, ever since he knew about saint weapons, he was certain that the Taya sword was a saint weapon. Such a peerless saint weapon had actually fallen into fair-faced flying dragon's hands. Didn't this mean that his strength had increased greatly? In truth, fair-faced flying dragon had taken the risk to enter Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum in order to seize the Taiya sword. In the end, Qin Shi Huang had used the sword to kill him, which was exactly what he wanted. He had already thought of a foolproof plan to seize the Taiya sword. How could he fail? Thus, he secretly stole the Taiya sword. By the time Qin Shi Huang discovered it, it was already too late. At that time, fair-faced flying dragon had already escaped. Fair-faced flying dragon would naturally inform the High Lord of what had happened in Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. With the Azure Dragon Hall's power, it would not be difficult for them to find out the origins of the Empyrean fairy. Fair-faced flying dragon proudly laughed. The two of you even recognized this sword. Back then, it was all thanks to you two holding back Qin Shi Huang that I had the chance to seize this sword. In truth, I never thought that Qin Shi Huang would be able to come back from the dead. If it wasn't for you two, I would have been killed by him. Speaking of which, I really have to thank the two of you. Tang Jing angrily said, Fair-faced flying dragon, don't be so smug. Back then, you escaped so quickly, and now you're jumping out with such pride. In my opinion, the Azure Dragon Hall is only a... The High Lord's gaze was cold as he stared at Tang Zheng, saying, the Azure Dragon Hall is not something you can judge. Tang Zheng, in fact, I have already met you for a long time. Met for a long time? Where? Tang Zheng curiously asked. However, at that time, you were only a baby in swaddling clothes. You were born with the 9 young saint body. This kind of person is a genius rarely seen in 10,000 years. How could I let you live? Thus, I ordered the martial sect's previous sect leader to kill you. Tang Zheng's heart beat wildly as killing intent leaked out from his eyes. He clenched his fists until they made popping sounds. The two of them already had a feud. Back then, he was almost killed because of him. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and said, you must be very regretful that you couldn't kill me. There is a bit of regret. I never thought that Wu Junshan would be so powerful as to deceive everyone and allow you to escape. The High Lord sighed. Tang Zheng thought about the torture he suffered when he was young and how he was lucky enough to almost lose his life. He was so angry that his eyes were about to spit fire. You hate me, don't you? No, you should be thanking me. If I didn't want to kill you, how could you have been sent out of the martial sect? How could you have such a fortuitous encounter today? Bah, you still want me to thank you? Keep dreaming. Your achievements today have truly exceeded my expectations. If I knew your true identity earlier, I would have killed you earlier. It's just that your development has far exceeded my expectations, so I want to see just how far your 9 young saint body can go. Unfortunately, the situation is becoming more and more chaotic. Even the Empyrean Fairy and the 100-change Star Lord have come out. I have no choice but to take action. Otherwise, if the chaos continues, it will not be good. As for you, I can still let you live because the Azure Dragon Hall has been peaceful for so many years. It is time for you to move around a bit. A blade that has been left out for too long has become blunt and rusty. It needs to be sharpened by a whetstone to become sharper. You are using me as a whetstone. You really are boasting shamelessly. Be careful that I don't break this blade of yours. Tang Zheng was furious. This High Lord gave off an unfathomable feeling. He could not see through him at all. Chapter 857. Through the mask, the High Lord's eyes were filled with a disdainful smile, and said, a whetstone is a whetstone. In the end, it is difficult to compare with a blade. Tang Zheng, if you retreat quickly, I can spare your life. Wishful thinking. Tang Zheng spat out a mouthful of saliva. The High Lord laughed meaningfully. Before I kill you, is anyone willing to tell me why you are gathered in the 10,000 huge mountains? Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the other party did not know the purpose of their trip, nor did he know what happened in the canyon. You won't know. Tang Zheng cleanly cut off the other party's thoughts. The High Lord did not mind. I will always have a way to know. If we don't agree, let's get down to business first. With a wave of the High Lord's hand, Shwa shwa shwa. The others all rushed out, and in an instant, there were more than 10 blood guillotines in the sky. Tangzheng, you killed the sword god and the sword 13, so you must know what this is. Today, I'll let you have a taste of it. Blood guillotine. Tangzheng gritted his teeth. Everyone be careful. This is a sharp weapon that New Era used to deal with cultivators. Many cultivators died under the blood guillotine. What bullshit blood guillotine? If it wasn't for the sneak attack when I wasn't prepared, how could it have injured me? The 100 Faces Star-Lord roared. 100 Faces Star-Lord, you and I are both cultivators. It's not too late to stop fighting after we deal with the people from the Azure Dragon Palace. Tangzheng suggested loudly, wanting to form an alliance. 100 Faces Star-Lord's eyes flickered. He hesitated for a moment, then agreed. All right, I'll agree to it for the time being, Tangzheng said in a low voice that only he could hear. 100 Faces Star-Lord is very fickle. Even if he agrees, he can't believe it completely, so we have to be on guard against him at all times. Empyrean Fairy looked at Tangzheng with approval, as if to say that he was not stupid enough to know that the 100 Faces Star-Lord was not trustworthy. Hee, what a touching scene. Even sworn enemies can huddle together for warmth. If there are more such cultivators, then this world will really be in chaos. The Great Lord sneered. He moved later, but arrived first. He actually overtook the flying guillotine and pushed his hands forward. An earth-shattering aura swept over. What a powerful skill. Everyone had this thought at the same time. They had fought for an entire night and had consumed a lot of energy. The other side was waiting for them to tire themselves out. Sure enough, they had the upper hand. My non-phase method has not been shown to anyone for many years. Today, you are in for a treat. As soon as the High Lord finished speaking, that earth-shattering aura was already in front of them. The ruins on the ground flew up into the air, whizzing towards the crowd. Everyone, hide behind me. Tangzheng roared and waved his hand in the air. The holy armor shield stood in the wind like a pillar, blocking in front of everyone. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign did not seem to want to waste his energy, so he hid behind the holy armor shield as well. However, he deliberately kept a distance from them. Bang, bang, bang. The holy armor shield kept vibrating. Every time it hit, Tangzheng's heart would beat violently. His blood was almost boiling, and his face and ears were red. Squeak, squeak. Xiaobai was indignant. In order to share the pressure of Tangzheng, he jumped up and spat out monstrous flames. The ruins turned into drops of heat in the flames and fell to the ground. The Empyrean Fairy activated the mountain river map. The map's suction force increased greatly, and a whirlwind blew. The ruins were sucked into the mountain river map. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign hid behind the crowd and watched coldly. He had no intention of helping. Tangzheng, just take care of yourself. There is no need to be a shield for someone else. Tian Chanzi also shouted and stepped forward. Whoosh whoosh. A few black shadows suddenly appeared in the sky, the flying guillotine. They arranged themselves in a circle and descended with a whistling sound, aiming for the heads of the people. Be careful, the Empyrean Fairy yelled. She pointed her finger above her head and shot it at the flying guillotine. However, the flying guillotine was like a slippery loach, cleverly dodging it. The flying guillotines seemed to be scattered, but there was actually a formation among them. They were interchanging with each other and were a whole. Tian Chanzi's eyes lit up. He said, the flying guillotine is maintained by the formation. If we break this formation, they will naturally fall apart. Formations were not only used by cultivators, but also by martial artists. They could also study formations and use them in martial arts as well as when facing enemies. The Azure Dragon Palace had always been dealing with cultivators. Of course, they would not let go of such a method like formations. The opponents had more than a dozen Grandmaster warriors. If they fought alone, except for Ling they would not be a match for the others. However, when they worked together and cooperated with the formation, their power increased sharply. The Great Lord was not surprised. He mocked, you saw through my formation. Do you think you can break it? The sky full of ruins had disappeared. The Great Lord was high in the air, looking down at them. He crossed his fingers and kept changing them. He is making hand seals. The Empyrean fairy reminded. Making hand seals? Didn't cultivators make hand seals when they used some secret techniques? Seeing Tang Zheng's suspicious eyes, Tianqianzi explained, warriors and cultivators are the same. They can make hand seals. This is a common aspect. It's just that there are very few warriors who can make hand seals. This non-phase method is really strange. The Great Lord had finished making hand seals. His fingers crossed into a strange posture. He opened his mouth and a sound came out of his mouth. Bang! It was a simple syllable. It seemed that he had used up all his strength to make this sound. Not only did his chest and abdomen resonate, but this sound resonated with the heaven and earth. It was shocking. This was the first time Tang Zheng had seen this kind of technique, and it was truly inconceivable. He was overwhelmed with shock as he felt a terrifying pressure descend from the heavens. Not only was it exerted on his body, it was also exerted on his spirit. For some reason, his movements slowed down as he watched the flying guillotine descend from the sky. However, he was powerless to stop it even though he had the will. Damn it! Tianqianzi roared. His movements were half a beat slower, but he still wielded the long sword in his hand. Swish! The sword light broke through the sky and hit the flying guillotine. The flying guillotine was covered with a burst of blood, but it was not damaged at all. It was just that the momentum of the attack slowed down, giving Tianqianzi time to dodge the attack. The Great Lord's attack was not a single attack. It was an indiscriminate and large-scale attack. The others were also affected, especially Ling Er. Her face was pale. The word almost shook her mind. The Fairy of the Nine Heavens and the 100 Transformation Star-Lord were the least affected. The 100 Transformation Star-Lord originally wanted to take advantage of the situation and not contribute if he could. However, as soon as the words were spoken, he knew that he could not stay out of this. Go! Empyrean Fairy summoned a flood and rushed to the flying guillotine above Tang Zheng's head. With a bang, the flying guillotine was hit, and Tang Zheng dodged a part of it. As for the flying guillotine that flew to Empyrean Fairy and 100 Faces Star-Lord, it did not hurt them. Although their movements were affected, it was not big. They finally understood that the flying guillotine's power was secondary. The most important thing was that the Great Lord's non-phase method was too strange. Combined with the flying guillotine, the lethality was really amazing. However, before they could catch their breath, the Great Lord opened his mouth again and another word came out. Ma. It was like thunder exploding in their ears, making their heartstrings tremble. An even more terrifying pressure came from all directions. Tang Zheng's face turned as pale as paper. Ling Er had softly fallen to the ground. This time, even Tianqianzi's mouth twitched. What is the origin of this non-phase method? It's so strange. Empyrean Fairy and 100 Faces Star-Lord looked at each other and realized that this was an unprecedented crisis. If they had not experienced a night of battle, they would not be afraid. But after the battle, this was really a matter of life and death. Their movements also became slow. Ma. They had not yet moved when the third word came out. This time, not only did their movements become slow, but even their thinking was half a beat slower. Once his thoughts slowed down, his actions slowed down even more. It was even more difficult to avoid the flying guillotines that were eyeing him covetously. For symbols venerable, stop them for me, Tang Zheng growled, but found that the 4 symbols venerable was motionless, as if he had really turned into a stone statue. What's going on? Tang Zheng was aghast. Even the 4 symbols venerable had lost his effect. This non-phase method communicates with heaven and earth. Don't look at it with only a few words and simple syllables. Each syllable can be synchronized with heaven and earth's aura and achieve resonance. This is the key. I don't know who created such a magical technique. It's really a genius. Qiyu exclaimed. Don't just praise. Tell me, what should we do? Tang Zheng complained. This non-phase method seems to have a particularly obvious effect on the murderous aura. The 4 symbols venerable's murderous aura is the strongest, so when it is suppressed by this power, it is like a mountain. Don't count on it. There's a way. Tang Zhang could not help but interrupt. People with pure minds and no murderous intent may not be affected. Qiyu hurriedly said. The inner demon snorted. Is there anyone in this world who has no distracting thoughts and a pure mind to such a state? I have seen countless people, but I have never seen such a person. The world is so big, nothing is too strange. Inner demons, your words are too absolute. Qiyu retorted. Humph, then you find one for me to see. Qiyu was speechless. He sighed and said, this kind of person is really hard to find. However, from my observation, the Venerable Lord's non-phase method has not been used yet. I'm afraid there are other words behind it. As if to confirm his words, another word resounded through heaven and earth. This time, even ordinary people could feel a resonance between heaven and earth. Everyone's face changed. This kind of martial technique was unheard of and unseen. No wonder the Azure Dragon Palace Hall was so confident. They actually had such a big killing weapon. This time, the flying guillotine did not rashly fall down to attack them. It seemed to be brewing, waiting for the final blow. The Venerable Lord was still brewing. Obviously, there was still another move. Tang Zhang was burning with anxiety. He constantly circulated his power to resist this strange power. However, the faster he circulated his power, the more violent the murderous aura in his heart surged. Instead, he felt more pressure. Chapter 858. Killing Intent. Who wouldn't have killing intent? Tang Zhang was burning with anxiety. Suddenly, his gaze landed on Linger, who was lying on the ground, and an idea came to him. Linger's heart was pure, like a piece of white paper. Could she do it? But seeing her in pain on the ground, he had some doubts. But since things had come to this, he could only try his best to fight for that slim chance of survival. Linger, listen to me. Get rid of all distracting thoughts, maintain your original heart, and don't think about anything else. Tang Zheng's voice seemed to have a magical power. Linger gave an in sound and hurriedly did as she was told. Wow, Master! Linger is not feeling bad anymore. Linger stood up, extremely surprised. Her black eyes looked at Tang Zheng curiously, not knowing what was going on. Is there really a person with such a pure heart in this world? The inner demons could not help but exclaim. Qiyu suddenly understood and said, I understand. She had experienced a night of battle before, and her body was inevitably contaminated with murderous aura. Her temperament was affected, but her nature was simple and was not really affected. So Tang Zheng asked her to get rid of the distracting thoughts. She drove the contaminated murderous aura out of her body and restored her simple nature. This non-phase method naturally could not hurt her. Hearing that, Tang Zheng was overjoyed. This was truly a pleasant surprise, and immediately shouted, Linger, the enemy's divine arts are extremely strange. This time, everyone will have to rely on you. Linger said in disbelief, Master, you guys are so powerful, but you still can't do anything. What can Linger do? Linger, you have to believe in yourself. There are some aspects in which you are stronger than us. Linger was extremely happy and nodded happily. Really? Linger had always thought that he was a burden and needed the protection of his master everywhere. Linger is too happy to be able to share master's worries. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth twitched as he forced out a smile and said, Linger, use this heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows to attack the High Lord. Tang Zheng summoned the two divine weapons and handed them to Linger. Linger held onto the divine weapon, her heart surging as she said, Master, Linger will definitely work hard. The shooting sun arrow was aimed at the High Lord, shining with a cold light. At this moment, the fourth word slipped out of his mouth. Bah! Linger was not affected at all. She pulled the shooting sun arrow into the shape of a full moon. She loosened her fingers, and the shooting sun arrow shot through the sky. Fair-faced flying dragon had been watching coldly from the sidelines, waiting for the final moment to deal a fatal blow to his opponent. However, before he could reach the final juncture, he was shocked to find that there was actually one person who was not affected. This person's strength was obviously weaker than the others, but why was she not affected? Before he could figure it out, He saw the person pulling the bow and pulling the arrow. He knew that Tang Zheng had a divine bow, and this was definitely that divine bow. Fair-faced flying dragon's face turned pale when he saw the cold gleam of the arrow piercing through the air, aiming straight for the High Lord. Although the High Lord's non-phase method was powerful, when using it, one had to be completely focused. If someone was not affected and counterattacked, it would be fatal. At this moment, the High Lord was like a 3-year-old child, unable to resist at all. This was the shortcoming of the non-phase method, and fair-faced flying dragon was very familiar with it. In the past, the crisis of this shortcoming did not erupt, because once the High Lord used the non-phase method, no one would not be affected. But the strange thing was that this time, there was actually someone who was not affected. The High Lord had instead become a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. High Lord, be careful. Fair-faced flying dragon roared and flew towards the High Lord, trying to intercept the shooting sun arrow. However, when he entered this space, his movements immediately slowed down. This was because he was also affected by this space. However, this shout finally awakened the High Lord, and his eyes suddenly swept towards the shooting sun arrow flying towards him. He wanted to dodge, but he was powerless. He could only watch the shooting sun arrow approach him. With a puff, the shooting sun arrow pierced through his left chest and went through his body. The High Lord screamed in pain and fell from the air. Everyone felt their bodies loosen, and they regained their freedom. Linger covered her mouth and looked at the scene in disbelief. She did not expect that it would actually succeed and resolve the crisis. Counterattack. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to shout and stepped forward bravely. The War Soul Sword pierced out to meet the flying guillotine in the air. The flying guillotine also attacked with all its might. Puff. With a loud sound, the flying guillotine was split into 2 halves. The person controlling it on the ground spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face darkened. The Empyrean Fairy recognized the High Lord, and her figure flashed as she attacked the High Lord. The High Lord clutched his chest, and blood flowed out. His face showed annoyance and disbelief. Obviously, he did not expect that there would be someone who was not affected by his non-phase method. He was already injured, and was not the Empyrean Fairy's opponent. He hurriedly retreated, but the Empyrean Fairy followed him like a shadow, obviously wanting to get rid of him completely. Stop! You are not allowed to hurt the High Lord. Fair-faced flying dragon roared, and the Taya sword slashed towards the Empyrean Fairy. Facing the Taya sword, the Empyrean Fairy did not dare to take it lightly. After all, it was a sacred tool. Moreover, she was very familiar with the Taya sword, and knew how powerful it was. If you want to hurt the High Lord, you will have to step over my dead body. Fair-faced flying dragon was dead set on the High Lord, and his attitude was very firm. The Empyrean Fairy snorted disapprovingly and brought out the stately painting. A powerful suction force immediately enveloped fair-faced flying dragon. Fair-faced flying dragon's expression suddenly changed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Fair-faced flying dragon fiercely slashed a few times at the stately painting. The powerful sword chi stirred the air, trying to break free from the stately painting's restraint. However, it was all in vain. Fair-faced flying dragon was a first-grade martial emperor, which was equivalent to a first-grade yuaning. There was a huge gap between him and the Empyrean Fairy, who was in the divine transformation realm. He could not resist at all. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign involuntarily rose into the air and flew towards the stately painting. No matter how he struggled, it was futile. Seeing this, the High Lord gritted his teeth and spat out the word me. The Empyrean Fairy's movements were sluggish. Fair-faced flying dragon immediately broke free and landed on the ground, holding the High Lord. The High Lord weakly shouted, "Retreat!" Fair-faced flying dragon madly rushed into the forest, and his voice came from afar. "The flying guillotine is behind. Stop them." In order to buy time for the High Lord to escape, he did not hesitate to sacrifice the flying guillotine. Change formation. More than a dozen martial masters shouted in unison. The flying guillotine changed formation in midair, and they shuttled back and forth. Their figures flickered, making it difficult to see clearly.
Attack!
With a loud shout, more than a dozen flying guillotine attacked the few people at once. They hummed and spun nonstop, like bloody mouths that were choosing people to devour. A group of dragons without a leader, yet you still dare to provoke me. Humph, I'll kill you first and let you know the consequences of sneak attacking me. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign roared and rushed over. The celestial water banner shook, and a torrential flood appeared out of thin air, hitting the flying guillotine and breaking the formation. Once the formation was broken, more than a dozen martial masters were immediately revealed, and they were flustered. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign rushed in and killed 2 people with just a few moves. However, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign did not stop and rushed into the forest in the blink of an eye. He's trying to escape, Tang Zheng shouted, wanting to chase after him, but was stopped by a few martial masters. Damn it, get out of the way. Tang Zheng roared in exasperation, but the few of them were like a human wall, blocking in front of him, making it impossible for him to pass through. Forget it. Let's take care of these people first. After the Empyrean fairy finished speaking, she displayed her divine might, and Tian Chanzi and the 4 symbols venerable did not hold back either, killing in all directions. The group of martial masters finally could not hold on any longer. Under the circumstances of paying the price of a few lives, they fled in all directions. Obviously, they knew that if they fled together, their chances of survival would be even slimmer. If they scattered and fled in all directions, there would always be someone who would be lucky enough to escape. This method was extremely rare. Tang Zheng had too few people on his side, and in the end, a few of them escaped. Tang Zheng did not care about these small fries, but in his heart, he gradually understood that there was a discrepancy in the information he searched in Jian Shursan's mind. It said that the flying guillotine was invincible, and many cultivators had died in their hands. Now it seemed that the flying guillotine was powerful, but that was because they had not faced experts like the Empyrean Fairy and the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. Otherwise, the flying guillotine could only flee in all directions. Perhaps, the flying guillotine had to cooperate with the venerable lord to display its great power. Just like just now, if Linger had not insisted on coming together, then they would definitely have been in big trouble, and even had their heads cut off by the flying guillotine. Therefore, the rumors of the flying guillotine were not all nonsense. This was then and now, and the situation was different. Let's continue to chase after the venerable lord. Tang Zheng did not want to let the tiger return to the mountain and said decisively. Several people agreed. They all had a lingering fear of his non-phase method, so they really wanted to leave him in the 100,000 mountains. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several people shuttled through the forest, like ghosts. Their speed was beyond imagination. Suddenly, the sound of fighting rang out in front of them. They were overjoyed and chased after it. However, they only saw a figure fleeing far away. It was obviously the multiform Star Sovereign. There were many corpses on the ground, and only one person was left standing. However, his body was dripping with blood, and he was in a sorry state. Long Xianyuan. Tang Zheng was secretly shocked. He recognized that the other party was actually the patriarch of the Long family, and those who died were probably also from the Long family. Why would the Long family be in the 100,000 mountains? Seeing Tang Zheng looking at him with an unfriendly expression, Long Xuanyuan's heart jumped wildly. This time, it was a very risky move for him to enter the 100,000 mountains. Although he grew up near the 100,000 mountains, his elders had warned him not to set foot in the 100,000 mountains. This time, he realized that Tang Zheng's purpose in coming to Dianan was not simple. In addition, Tang Zheng rushed into the 100,000 mountains in a hurry. He guessed that something big must have happened, so on a whim, he brought people to chase after him. What he discovered along the way was an eye-opener and a deep shock. However, before he could find Tang Zheng, he found a person holding a masked man in a hurry and slipped away from them in the blink of an eye. Long Xianyuan was shocked. There was actually such a strong martial artist, but before he could say a few more words, he realized that another child had rushed over. This child actually did not distinguish between right and wrong, and directly started killing his people. Of course, He wanted to stop it, but found that it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. However, after the child killed his men, before he could kill him, he was chased by the pursuers. In the next second, he saw that the pursuer was actually Tang Zheng. Chapter 859. Their eyes met, and Tang Zheng and Long Xinyuan looked at each other in disbelief. "Why are you here?" Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly. His two sword-like eyebrows were raised high, and he asked straightforwardly. He subconsciously thought of the conflict with Long Tengfei and Dianan. The Long family didn't have any reaction, so he didn't care too much. Now that he saw Long Xinyuan in the 10,000 Mountains, he naturally thought that the other party was here for him. Long Xuanyuan's expression was complicated. The people he brought were all wiped out, and then he met Tang Zheng and the others. He knew that if he said something wrong, it would lead to serious consequences. Tang Zheng's strength was far superior to his. No one would know if he killed him in this desolate 10,000 Mountains. Some time ago, there was a huge earthquake in the 10,000 Mountains. I guess that there must be a problem, so I came to investigate. Long Xinyuan replied without hesitation. This was indeed one of his goals. Who is he? Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi looked at Long Xinyuan lightly, not putting him in their eyes at all. Long Xinyuan also felt this contempt, but he didn't dare to refute. He had already guessed the identity of these two people. One was Tian Chanzi, and the other was the mysterious woman who helped him kill the sword god. Greater than over equal to, even though Long Xinyuan had seen enough big battles in his life, he still couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw these two people. "I am Long Xinyuan of the Dianan Long family." Long Xinyuan introduced himself modestly. When Tian Chanzi heard this, he didn't have much of a reaction at all. He said directly, "Why are we wasting time here? Hurry up and chase after the 100 Faces Star Lord. If we let him escape, it will be like looking for a needle in a haystack." The 100 Faces Star Lord was proficient in transformation techniques and could transform into anyone. This was a skill that the 100 Faces Star Lord had never used before, so they were quite afraid. "There's no need to chase," Empyrean Fairy suddenly said. "He has already escaped into the vast 10,000 Mountains. There is nowhere to find him." Tian Chanzi glared at Long Xinyuan with an unfriendly expression. Long Xinyuan felt as if he had been locked onto by the god of death, and a sense of fear involuntarily rose in his heart. It's all his fault. If he hadn't delayed us, the 100 Transformation Star Sovereign definitely wouldn't have been able to escape. Tian Chanzi said coldly. Long Xinyuan wanted to defend himself, but he found that he was not confident enough. But in the end, he took a deep breath and mustered up his courage. He said hesitantly, "Senior, is that child called the 100 Change Star Lord? Actually, we can be considered to have delayed him a little." Although he lived in the vicinity of the 100,000 Mountains, he did not know of the great name of the 100 Transformation Star Lord like the Azure Dragon Hall and the Li Palace. However, for a child to be called the 100 Transformation Star Lord and be so feared by these people, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Although he had doubts in his heart, he still tried his best to explain himself. He was deeply afraid that the other party would really put all the blame on him. "You still dare to quibble?" Tian Chanzi shouted angrily. Although he was usually very gentle to Tian Chanzi, and even a little disrespectful to him, when facing the unfamiliar Long Xinyuan, he was still very imposing, causing people to not dare to resist. Long Xinyuan didn't know how to respond, and the fear in his heart grew stronger and stronger. At this point, he finally understood that no matter what grudges he had with Tang Zheng had already left him far behind. If he recklessly wanted to take revenge, he was afraid that he would be the first to die, and then the unlucky ones would be the Long family. In fact, Long Xinyuan was very clear about what his son, Long Tengyu, had done. It was impossible to say that Long Tengyu's death had nothing to do with Tang Zheng, but it was a bit far-fetched to say that it had too much to do with him. Long Tengyu was actually reaping what he had sown and had only himself to blame. Although Long Xinyuan was very unwilling to admit this, he knew that this was the cruel reality. He was smarter than the other patriarchs in that he wouldn't go to a dead end. Such a long time was enough for him to calm down and think clearly about the cause and effect. If he wasn't such a person, he wouldn't have trusted Mu Hongyan so much and handed over all the properties of the Long family to her, letting her, a person with a different surname, take care of them. Moreover, Tang Zheng had actually done a favor to the Long family, and Nana's life was saved by Tang Zheng. If he stubbornly dealt with Tang Zheng, not only would it be of no benefit to the Long family, it would also be ungrateful. As for Long Tingfei's death, how could the life and death of a side-branch rice bucket affect Long Xuanyuan's heart much? If it was said that before he entered the 10,000 mountains this time, he still had some hope in his heart to see if he could create some trouble for Tang Zheng. But at this moment, this kind of thought had completely disappeared. He had already made up his mind to write off his grudge with Tang Zheng. He had saved Nana's life, and Long Tengyu's death had cancelled each other out. But the crisis in front of him was that Tian Chanzi seemed to have blamed him for the escape of the 100 Faces Star-Lord, causing him to be in trouble. Looking at Long Xuanyuan's twitching mouth, Tang Zheng couldn't help but think of Nana. After all, the other party was Nana's grandfather. Moreover, both of his sons had already died, so he was indeed a pitiful person. As for the Long family, Tang Zheng didn't think that they could threaten him now. Therefore, whether it was for the sake of Nana or Mu Hongyan, he was prepared to let Long Xuanyuan go. Tang Zheng coughed and stood up. Long Xuanyuan looked at him in shock, not knowing what he was going to do. He was terrified to find that not only was he facing Heaven Monk, even he was facing Tang Zheng. He was actually feeling fear in his heart, as if he was looking at a tall mountain. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was really old, and he had to admit that he was old. Patriarch Long, I don't know why you entered the 10,000 mountains this time, but the 10,000 mountains is not a place you should come to. I'm sure you have experienced the danger just now. However, if you want to target me, you have to think twice before you act. For the sake of Nana and Sister Mu, I will not pursue this matter. Please do as you wish. Tang Zheng said. Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't pursue the matter, Long Xuanyuan heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't wait to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead and said, Tang Zheng, you misunderstood. I definitely didn't mean to target you. As for the grudge between you and the Long family, I have thought it through. Nana and Hongyan have been taken care of by you. I haven't personally thanked you yet. There's no need to thank me. Sister Mu has helped me a lot. Moreover, I like Nana very much. I have always treated her as a sister. Long Xuanyuan heaved a sigh of relief. He really didn't have any resentment. He asked nervously, Then can I go and see Nana in the future? The older generation valued the inheritance of the family very much. Long Xuanyuan only had one descendant left, Nana. In his heart, he missed her very much. Tang Zheng occasionally heard Nana mention her grandfather. He knew that Long Xuanyuan had always treated her well. After pondering for a while, he agreed. This was Long Xuanyuan's right. You are Nana's grandfather? The Empyrean fairy suddenly asked. Long Xuanyuan was even more nervous when facing the Empyrean fairy. He knew that this was the fierce person who killed the sword god. He hurriedly bowed slightly and said, Yes, Nana is my disciple. The Empyrean fairy simply said this sentence and didn't say anything else. Long Xuanyuan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He looked at the Empyrean fairy in disbelief. His granddaughter was actually a disciple of this person. This was really the Long family's fortune. Immediately, he bowed deeply to the Empyrean fairy and said, It is the fortune of 3 lifetimes for Nana to be able to enter your sect. This old man thanks you. The Empyrean fairy looked at him indifferently and said, I accepted her as my disciple because of her talent. It has nothing to do with you and the Long family. Yes, yes. Long Xuanyuan hurriedly nodded and didn't dare to refute. But this is also a great fortune of the Long family. Can I ask you to let me play host after you leave the 10,000 mountains? I said, This has nothing to do with you. The Empyrean fairy refused. Long Xuanyuan didn't dare to persuade again, but the wrinkles at the corner of his eyes were filled with joy. Suddenly, his heart moved, and he pointed in a direction and said, There is an injured person going in that direction. Why didn't you say so earlier? Heaven Monk snorted angrily and rushed out as if he was flying. Tang Zheng and the others no longer cared about Long Xinyuan and shot out. Since they couldn't catch up with the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, they would chase after the Azure Dragon Hall's High Lord and fair-faced Flying Dragon. These two people would definitely escape from the 10,000 mountains. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. Long Xinyuan put away the shock on his face, hesitated for a moment, and also chased after them. This time, he didn't want to deal with Tang Zheng, but wanted to see what he could do to help. The change in his way of thinking allowed both sides to bury the hatchet, and also gave himself and the Long family a chance to live. The few of them were as fast as lightning, shuttling through the dense forest. Suddenly, the Empyrean fairy shouted, "There is the smell of blood in this direction." The High Lord was injured, and the smell of blood was definitely the High Lord's. The few of them were shocked and chased forward. Sure enough, they saw a figure in front of them. It wasn't the High Lord or fair-faced Flying Dragon, but a member of the Flying Guillotine who had escaped earlier. The other party didn't seem to be surprised by the arrival of the pursuers. Instead, the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of complacency. "You want to kill the High Lord? Dream on. It seems that you guys expected us to chase after you, so you deliberately used this method to lure us here. In fact, the High Lord and fair-faced Flying Dragon have already escaped to God knows where, right?" Tang Zheng saw through the other party's thoughts with a glance. The other party's eyes fluctuated violently, but he didn't say anything. Tang Zheng understood. As expected, he guessed correctly. This High Lord was too smart. However, his left chest was pierced by the shooting sun arrow, and his heart should have been hit as well. Why wasn't he dead yet? Tang Zheng guessed that the other party must have a special life-saving method. Capture him alive. Tang Zheng decided to capture him alive and use the soul search to search for more information about the Azure Dragon Palace. The other party's expression changed greatly. He didn't resist, but raised his hand and slapped his own head. With the other party's strength, his head would probably explode like a ripe watermelon. "You want to die in front of me? Not so easy." Tang Zheng learned from Jian Shisan's mistake, so he couldn't let the other party succeed. He stretched out his arm and used the swallowing heaven technique. A black hole appeared in his palm and immediately sucked the other party into his palm and controlled him. Chapter 860. Tang Zheng controlled the man and was about to use the soul-searching technique when he found that the other party had a sneer on his face. He was startled, and a bad premonition hit his heart. Sure enough, the other party's head tilted and he died. Under his control, the corner of his mouth overflowed with a trace of black blood. Poisoned, Tang Zheng suddenly realized and pried open his mouth. Sure enough, he was poisoned. Although Tang Zheng controlled him, he still triggered the poison and died immediately, not giving Tang Zheng a chance. A great master martial artist was actually willing to give up his life like this. Tang Zheng was extremely shocked. A great master martial artist was an extremely important existence to a family, but this person actually sacrificed himself without hesitation. What kind of existence was the Azure Dragon Palace that they could train such a person? Tang Zheng was shocked. He loosened his hand, and the other party fell to the ground. After such a delay, it was impossible for them to catch up to the High Lord, so they simply gave up on the chase. The others looked at this scene and were deeply shocked. Tian Chanzi said, "The Azure Dragon Palace will be our biggest threat. If we don't get rid of them, one day it will lead to a disaster." The Empyrean fairy added, "The phaseless method is even more strange and unpredictable. I feel that the power of the phaseless method has not been fully exerted. Otherwise, I'm afraid its power would be even greater, and it would be even more disadvantageous for us. Therefore, we must figure out what kind of martial arts the phaseless method is." After saying that, she looked at Linger in surprise. She was the only one who was not affected by the phaseless method, so the breakthrough was naturally on her. Linger looked at the Empyrean fairy blankly. Although she turned the situation around with her own strength, she was not clear about what was going on. Tang Zheng knew that the Empyrean fairy had not figured out the reason for the phaseless method, so he explained, "The horror of the phaseless method is that it affects almost everyone. As long as a person has murderous intent and hostility, and their heart is not completely pure, it is difficult to be an exception. What did you say? Who told you that? The Empyrean fairy was shocked. Chiyu. The Empyrean fairy fell silent. Tian Chanzi's eyes also revealed a look of disbelief as he said, "We've been through so many battles, and the murderous aura has long since seeped into our bones. Even if it is an ordinary person, it is impossible to have a completely pure mind. The power of this non-phase method is too terrifying." Tang Jing nodded in agreement. From this, it can be seen that this Azure Dragon Palace is indeed not just an empty name, but the real deal. I understand. Linger is a ginseng, and her mind is pure enough to not be affected by the non-phase method. I didn't expect that she would be the one to save us this time. The Empyrean fairy had mixed feelings. Linger looked at everyone blankly. She didn't realize that she had such a big role. Looking at her ignorant appearance, Tang Jing smiled and said, "Linger, this time everyone was saved by you. Now you know how powerful you are, right?" Linger shook her head like a rattle drum and said nervously, "Master, Linger is not as powerful as you say. Without you, Linger would not have been able to do this." Don't be modest. In addition, did you notice that when the Great Lord used the non-phase method, although we were all affected, he was also helpless and couldn't use other attacks? He had to rely on the flying guillotine to attack us. In addition, anyone who entered his attack range would be attacked indiscriminately. Therefore, the fair-faced flying dragon failed to save him. The Empyrean fairy pointed out. Therefore, the Great Lord and the flying guillotine complemented each other. This is the most fatal method of the Azure Dragon Hall. Tian Chanzi concluded. Tang Jing nodded, admitting that what the two said was true. He added, therefore, to deal with the Great Lord, we have to rely on Linger. Suddenly, the three people focused their eyes on Linger. Linger felt an inexplicable pressure and said nervously, "Don't look at me. I'm really not that powerful." Linger, don't belittle yourself. Be confident. Tang Jing urged. Oh, but the most important point is that Linger's mind cannot be changed by pollution. Otherwise, facing the non-phase method will be in vain. The Empyrean fairy said. Tang Jing and Tian Chanzi both nodded. This was the most important thing. To keep a person's heart, especially in this materialistic society, it was much more difficult than cultivating martial arts. Linger, did you hear that? Tang Jing asked. Linger nodded hesitantly. This is Master's order. Linger will definitely do it. It's not enough to rely on her own efforts. We have to make the people around her reliable enough. We can't let her hands be stained with the slightest bit of blood and evil aura. The Empyrean fairy said. Tang Jing had to admit that the Empyrean fairy was very thoughtful. Although it was very difficult, he still had to do it. Linger was like a national treasure that must be protected in all aspects, and not only to protect her from harm. I will order Yi Yuan to lead the elites of the Witch Clan back. Tang Jing didn't think that Me and the others could do this. They could do business, but they couldn't do anything about these things. In the past, he was afraid that the authorities or the Azure Dragon Palace would deal with the Witch Clan, so he placed them and the people of the martial sect on the island. Now that he had the Empyrean fairy, at least the authorities wouldn't dare to act rashly. In addition, he had another layer of consideration. After all, the Witch Clan was the core of the Juli tribe. Chiyu had awakened again. If he didn't tighten his close relationship with the Witch Clan, if one day Chiyu left his body, would he take the Witch Clan back under his command? Tang Jing didn't want the Witch Clan to be taken back under Chiyu's command. Then he would summon the Witch Clan back and let them stay by his side to deepen the relationship between them. Of course, there was no need to make this thought public. Although Chiyu and the inner demons were in his body, Tang Jing's strength was no longer the same as before. His spirit was strong, so the two of them were unable to detect his thoughts. He was not afraid that Chiyu would know. In fact, even if he knew, Chiyu couldn't do anything about it. It's best that you have your own arrangements. Linger is the most important. We can't lose her. Empyrean fairy emphasized. Long Xinyuan also caught up. Seeing the corpse on the ground, The corner of his mouth twitched a few times. Seeing that the few of them were looking over, he quickly said, Tanglinger, Miss Tang, has encountered some problems with the official cooperation with Dianan. I have a way to solve it. He did not hear the conversation between the few of them just now. It was purely to deepen the relationship between them. Tang Zheng was also clear about this, but he did not make a decision immediately. Instead, he looked at Linger. Linger understood and said, Master, you make the decision. Linger will listen to you. Linger, this is your job. What do you think? Linger looked around and said, The scenery of Dianan is beautiful, and there are 10,000 mountains. Although it is dangerous, Linger also likes the environment here, so the cooperation with Dianan is quite good. It seemed that Linger really liked Dianan. Tangjing nodded and said, Then it's up to you. You will be the tourism ambassador. Long Xinyuan was overjoyed and promised, Everyone, please rest assured. This matter will be done as soon as possible. Originally, Linger came for the cooperation, but the matter with Long Tengfei caused it to be ruined. With Long Xuanyuan's power, this was a small matter. Of course, he could turn the situation around. Linger smiled sweetly and politely nodded to Long Xinyuan to thank him. The monsters in the 10,000 mountains are either dead or have fled. The threat has been mostly eliminated. As for the 100 Faces Star-Lord, it will be very difficult to find him, so there is no need to stay here. Tang Zheng said. Empyrean Fairy glanced at Long Xinyuan. Long Xinyuan was very smart and immediately retreated far away. He knew that they had something to talk about and did not want him to know. Although he was curious, he did not dare to eavesdrop. I want to go to Mount Buzhou to take a look. Empyrean Fairy said that before coming, Tang Zheng had already told her about Mount Buzhou and the 100 Faces Star-Lord. She was naturally very curious. The 100 Faces Star-Lord is definitely not in Mount Buzhou. Tang Zheng said, I'm not looking for him. I'm looking for Mount Buzhou. Empyrean Fairy insisted. All right, let's go to Mount Buzhou. Tang Zheng was actually not too willing to expose Mount Buzhou in front of too many people. After all, Mount Buzhou was related to the Heaven Stairway, and furthermore, Yin Xingyi's prophecy also involved Mount Buzhou. However, Empyrean Fairy was not an outsider, so he had no way to refuse this request. Patriarch Long, let's part ways here. You don't have to follow us anymore, understand? Tang Zheng called Long Xinyuan over and warned him. Long Xinyuan understood that the other party was going to do something secretive. If he continued to follow them, he would be asking for trouble. He promised and said that he would immediately go back and prepare for Linger's tourism ambassador. After bidding farewell to each other, Tang Zheng and the rest rushed towards Mount Buzhou and entered the prehistoric heavenly tomb once again. Occasionally, there would be monsters appearing, but they were extremely weak. When they saw these people, they would run in all directions. The demonic beasts were not idiots. Even their master, the 100 Faces Star-Lord, had failed. So how could they dare to compete with Tang Zheng and the rest? Tian Chanzi looked at the messy prehistoric heavenly tomb, especially the tombstones that had fallen to the ground. Tian Chanzi sighed with emotion. I'm afraid that even in their dreams, these experts would never have thought that they would suffer such a great crime after death. This 100 Faces Star-Lord is truly too despicable. I'm guessing that the 100 Faces Star-Lord will probably leave the 10,000 huge mountains. There's nothing left for him here. In the future, he could be anyone, and the threat to us would be even greater. Tang Zheng sighed faintly. How could everyone not know this? But there was nothing they could do. Gradually, Mount Buzhou appeared in their line of sight. It was covered in white snow, and the mountainside was shrouded in clouds, making it impossible to see through. Empyrean Fairy stared blankly at Mount Buzhou and said, When I was young, I heard my father mention Mount Buzhou, but at that time, Mount Buzhou was already broken, and no one knew where Mount Buzhou was. I never thought that it would actually be hidden here. Mount Buzhou is connected to the sky beyond heaven. If we rebuild the heaven stairway, we can go to the sky beyond heaven and bring the others back. Tian Chanzi had always been thinking about this matter. Mount Buzhou was still enveloped by the enchantment and isolated from the outside world. Tang Zheng was familiar with the process and easily broke through the enchantment. Behind the enchantment was another world. The spring breeze was as warm as spring, and the flowers, birds, grass, and insects were full of vitality. Back then, the 100 transformations Star Sovereign lived in this barrier, but this barrier could not stop him. He could come and go as he pleased. The Empyrean fairy looked at this world and clicked her tongue in admiration. Mount Buzhou is really magical. There are so many sights. Master, doesn't this look like the paradise described in the books? The scenery is so beautiful, Ling said with her eyes wide open. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. This is not a paradise. 100 transformations Star Sovereign used to live here. It was very dangerous. Ling pursed her lips and said, "It's such a pity that such a bad person lived here. But he definitely doesn't live here now." Tang Zheng said that 100 transformations Star Sovereign was imprisoned here for tens of thousands of years. Once he escaped, he would definitely not be willing to step foot here again. In the future, we will live in the 100,000 mountains. We can also come here occasionally to play. Ling looked forward to it. After a while, they arrived at the small wooden house where 100 transformations Star Sovereign used to live. However, it had become a pile of ruins and was no longer peaceful. Back then, the furthest Tang Zheng's group had come was here. Later on, they were chased by 100 transformations Star Sovereign and had no time to explore the other places of Mount Buzhou. Tang Zheng gave a simple introduction. The Empyrean fairy nodded secretly and said, "Then let's continue forward. We haven't reached the peak yet." Tang Zheng was moved. He also wanted to explore the peak and gladly accepted. The group continued forward. The scenery along the way became more and more beautiful. It was truly a scene of paradise. Suddenly, a thick fog shrouded the front, blocking everyone's path. "This fog is strange." The Empyrean fairy frowned. "Amazing, you can see it with a single glance." Tang Zheng praised. He walked straight to the fog and waved his hand. The fog also surged as if it was alive. "This is a formation?" Tian Chanzi asked hesitantly. After the stairway to heaven was destroyed, the peak was sealed by a formation. Normal people can't reach it. This is what Qiyu told me. Tang Zheng explained. The method to break the formation was naturally from Qiyu. As soon as he finished speaking, the fog was pushed aside and retreated to the sides. A strong wind blew, causing them to sway and almost lose their balance. "Everyone be careful. This peak is not simple. It's very dangerous," Tang Zheng warned. He held Linger's hand and said, "Linger, follow me." Linger smiled sweetly. She held Tang Zheng's hand tightly and followed him obediently. The strong wind was biting cold. The aura of heaven and earth had become very chaotic. It was completely different from the previous fragrance of flowers and birds. It was as if they had entered another world. This Mount Buzhou was really strange. The foot of the mountain, the middle of the mountain, and the peak were three completely different scenes. It was like three different worlds. If a normal person came to the peak, they would have been blown away by the strong wind and fallen off the cliff to their death. They didn't walk very far before they found that the path beneath their feet had become dangerous. There were cliffs on both sides. There was only a straight path in the middle. The path went straight up and stopped abruptly after a few dozen meters. "We've reached the peak," Tang Zheng said. Although Qiyu had described this scene to him before, he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. Tang Zheng had been to Sky Mountain before, but Mount Buzhou seemed to be closer to the sky. They were only one step away from reaching the sky. It was really within reach. The few of them stared at the end of the path. The Empyrean fairy said, "Is that where the stairway to heaven broke?" "Yes. If we follow that path to rebuild the stairway to heaven, we can reach the sky beyond heaven." Tang Zheng pointed to the end of the path and said. Linger looked at the sky blankly and asked, "Linger has also been on a plane. It's higher than here. Why didn't I see the sky beyond heaven?" The Empyrean fairy looked deeply at her and said, "The sky beyond heaven isn't really in the sky. It's another world. The stairway to heaven is the key to opening that other world. I'm guessing that there's a formation in the stairway to heaven or something like that that can trigger the passage to the sky beyond heaven. It doesn't mean that one can only go to the sky beyond heaven by ascending to the sky beyond heaven. Linger didn't fully understand and looked blankly at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng, on the other hand, understood. He was deeply impressed and said, "You are right. The heaven stairway is the key and door to the sky beyond heaven. As for why it has such an effect, even Qi Yu is not clear about it." How did the stairway to heaven come about? Tang Zheng had already asked Qi Yu this question and answered, "The stairway to heaven was accidentally discovered by someone. As for its origin, no one knows." Well, it seemed that the stairway to heaven was as mysterious as the sky beyond heaven. If they wanted to solve all of this, they would have to rebuild the stairway to heaven. The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi looked at the mountain peak in front of them with burning eyes. It was as if they were imagining the scene after the stairway to heaven was rebuilt. Tian Chanzi waved his fist and said, "No matter how dangerous the sky beyond heaven is, as long as I'm alive, I will definitely explore it." Tang Zheng looked deeply at him. Tang Zheng was also curious about the sky beyond heaven, but he wasn't that interested at the moment. The Empyrean Fairy seemed to be a little unwilling and leaped into the air. Like a dancing butterfly, she flew straight up into the sky. The astral wind in front of her became more and more biting cold. It blew her hair up and her body swayed along with it. Suddenly, her body became sluggish and stopped helplessly. Then, as if she had received a huge recoil, she had no choice but to retreat. She staggered to the ground and almost fell off the mountain peak. Whoosh! She took a deep breath and said, "There's something strange up ahead." "What's strange?" the others asked curiously. "The aura between heaven and earth is completely chaotic. The astral wind is very overbearing and there's a mysterious force that's preventing me from moving forward and pushing me back," the Empyrean Fairy said with a dignified expression. The others' expressions changed and said, "Is it really that strange?" Looking at the Empyrean Fairy's expression, it was obvious that all of this was true. This place was connected to the sky beyond heaven and was indeed not an ordinary place. This is the place where two worlds are connected. Everything can't be judged by common sense. This is our world, but it also has some of the attributes of the sky beyond heaven. Moreover, this astral wind is very strange. Look at the direction of the wind, and it seems to be blowing from the sky. I suspect that it's directly blown from the sky beyond heaven," the Empyrean Fairy said with deep feelings. Tian Chanzi looked deeply at the sky and said resolutely, "I'll go up and take a look too." Whoosh! He leaped into the air, but before he could reach the place where the Empyrean Fairy was, he was blown away by the astral wind and directly fell back in shock. "I agree with your judgment. This astral wind is indeed strange. It's very likely that it's blown from the sky beyond heaven." Tian Chanzi agreed. Tang Zheng frowned and pondered. Suddenly, he had an idea and said, "Since this is the place where two worlds are connected, if there's no stairway to heaven, can we rush through here and reach the sky beyond heaven?" The Empyrean Fairy and Tian Chanzi looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. They smiled bitterly and said, "We can't. Why don't you give it a try? Your cultivations are so much higher than mine. If you can't do it, it's even more impossible for me." Tang Zheng shook his head helplessly. This was whimsical. How could it be so easy? If it was really that easy, after the stairway to heaven was destroyed, there would be no one who could reach the sky beyond heaven from here. "Master, you should give it a try. If they can't do it, it doesn't mean that you can't." Linger encouraged. In her eyes, Tang Zheng seemed to be omnipotent. Squeak, squeak. Little White also nodded in agreement at the side. Tang Zheng was moved by their words and changed his mind. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.